We now come to the Sir David Amess Adjournment Debate. Minister to move.
I beg to move.
The question is as on the order paper, and I call Mark Francois.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I am honoured to open this debate in the memory of our great friend, my great friend, Sir David Amess. A fallen comrade whose plaque I'm looking at right now on the other side of the house, just above where he used to sit, and appropriately enough, directly opposite that of Joe Cox, another fallen comrade who graced this house while she was here. Perhaps as there are a number of new members here, maybe nervously waiting to make their maiden speeches, I remember that feeling too. I could just explain why we call it the Sir David Amess Debate. It's not just in the honour of his service, it's because he was a past master at making use of it. In essence, David would manage to cram a vast number of different topics, usually related to his constituency, into a very small amount of time. From memory, the all-time record was 20 different subjects in 12 minutes, each of which mysteriously led to a subsequent press release. And he basically turned it into an art form. And as a result of that, the end-of-term adjournment debate was always known in the Commons tea room as the Sir David Amess Debate. So Mr. Speaker and the House authorities, after his loss, decided to turn that from de facto to de jure and formalised it and gave it his name. But I'm delighted that we've done that because it helps to keep his name alive. Yes, of course. No, perhaps not on even on the adjournment. Yes.
Can I commend Honourable Gentleman? Every one of us who had the pleasure of knowing Sir David Amess, imagine him on the far side. He was able to rhyme off about 30 things, I think, at some speed, every one of them pertinent to his constituency, but he did it with a grace and respect that we all loved, and we do miss him dearly. Is it the Right Honourable Gentleman's intention to do the same 30 items in about 12 minutes?
No, I can reassure the Honourable Gentleman and the House I intend to raise 3 topics, which are...
Before he does?
Yes, certainly.
Before he leaves the subject of Sir David, whom I first met in the 1970s in a different place and when I was in a different party briefly, I would just like to ask his confirmation that in all those many years I cannot think of a single occasion when David said a mean or unkind or unfair thing about anyone. And there are not many people one can say that about, and I, for one, regard him as an inspiration.
I generally agree with my right honourable friend, particularly about defence matters, but he's summed my great friend up very well. And in 1 second, I will, however, at the end of the debate, make a small revelation about David and the 1983 general election, which I hope colleagues will find amusing. I give way to my right honourable friend.
David Amess, of course, was a famous backbencher. He spent his career here entirely on those backbenches. During the 19 years I was on the front bench, I tried to do all kinds of things. But I'm absolutely certain David Amess achieved far more than I ever did, speaking for the backbenchers. And that tells a story of itself. It's perfectly possible, as David illustrated, to make a huge difference, not only to your constituents, but to this place, from all parts of this house.
Well,
I feel my right honourable friend is being too modest about his own achievements. I hope Hansard got that.
They have now.
But I want to raise three specific topics, Madam Deputy Speaker. One is about animal welfare. The second is about local NHS services, as perhaps in a non-partisan way. And thirdly, and finally, this story about the election. So, to turn to animal welfare first, David was an absolutely renowned animal lover.
Yeah.
He frequently raised a number of animal welfare issues in this House and campaigned for them passionately, including by forming alliances with people on the other side of the aisle, as they would say in Congress. Specifically, he was a patron of the Conservative Animal Welfare Foundation, the CAWF, a wonderful organisation run by two brilliant people, Christopher and Lorraine Platt, which has actively campaigned on animal welfare issues for a number of years, increasing penalties for animal cruelty, seeking to ban the imports of hunting trophies, ending the cruel use of farrowing crates for sows and piglets. They've got one of those, two more to go. He was also a serial entrant into the Westminster Dog of the Year competition. Every year he would faithfully enter his dog. Every year he would come back to his office full of faux outrage about the fact that for some inexplicable reason his dog had not been awarded the prize. My office was round the corner on that corridor, and we always knew to hide when David was coming back from the competition. Except in his final year, he entered his French pug, named Vivian. Named incidentally after Julia Roberts' character in Pretty Woman. Only my mate could name a pet after a dog who earned her money in that way. And when he put Vivian in, he was asked by a local journalist, why should members of the public vote for Vivian rather than one of the other dogs? And his answer was, because Vivian wants Southend to become a city. And he won twice. After he was murdered, Southend did become a city. So we like to think that he won in the end. And indeed, on a wave of public sympathy, Vivian was voted the Westminster Dog of the Year. And my great friend, the Honourable Member for Romford, and I had the privilege of accepting the award on their behalf with Vivian in tow. And I'm delighted to tell the House that I've been very honoured to be asked to become a patron of the Conservative Animal Welfare Foundation, a duty I've proudly taken up this week, partly in David's memory, and I will attempt to match his legacy in terms of campaigning for animal welfare, and I'm deeply indebted to the Conservative Animal Welfare Foundation for giving me that opportunity. Secondly, David was always had a strong interest in the National Health Service, Madam Deputy Speaker. He served for many years as a senior member of the Health Select Committee of this House. And I declare an interest at this stage, as I'm proud to say that my wife, Olivia, works as a senior neuroradiographer in the NHS and has done for many years. And I'm very proud of what she and all the other staff of the National Health Service achieve for us day in and day out. I had the privilege of going on a ride-out with the East of England Ambulance Service, or E-East. A few weeks ago, I was accompanied by a senior paramedic named Emily, who showed me the ambulance service in action. We were in an emergency response vehicle. I was immensely impressed by not just her professionalism, but her empathy with the people with whom she came into contact. An absolute professional. And I'm pleased to report that while the East of England Ambulance Service has been through a turbulent time, they were in special measures for a while under the leadership of their previous Chief Executive, Tom Abel. They are now out of special measures, and when we went to Southend Hospital as part of my ride-out, whereas before there were often a dozen ambulances in the car park early on a Thursday evening, on this occasion there were only 3. But there is an issue at Southend because the A&E unit is, shall we say, not really well designed, and there's a very narrow entrance that goes into it, such that if there is a trolley in the corridor, it's very difficult to get people in and out. So I'm pleased to report that the Hospital Trust have secured £8 million in capital to completely rebuild A&E to have a proper purpose-designed entrance that ambulances can back into and discharge their patients more quickly. So the first phase of that will hopefully open prior to Christmas, and it will be possible to expand capacity in A&E as well and to treat more patients more quickly. That was something David and his successor, Anna Firth, campaigned for very hard, and he would be pleased to know that the first phase of that, hopefully, as I say, will open by Christmas. I campaigned some years ago to expand primary care in my constituency. I helped to get an expansion of Alderney Mills surgery in Rayleigh, and I've been involved in campaigns to expand two others, specifically the Riverside Medical Centre in Holbridge and the Jones Family Practice in Hockley. Tom Abel, as it happens, has now taken over as the chief exec of the new Mid and South Essex Integrated Care Board. I had a meeting with him about these surgeries only a week or so ago. I'm pleased to report to the House it was a very positive meeting, and I'm therefore hopeful that we'll be able to bring those expansions about. Now, I did say that I would tell the House about the 1983 general election, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'm not sure what I'm about to reveal was previously in the public domain. For context, in 1979, Basildon was one of the largest constituencies in the country. So in the early 80s, the boundary review basically divided it into along the A127 arterial road. And David never used to like the term safe seat because he always said that implied that one took one's constituents for granted, which he palpably never did. But the pundits said that a safe Tory seat had been created around Billericay in the north, to the north of the A127, and a safe Labour seat had been created in Basildon Newtown. So at the time, it was sort of regarded as a one-all draw. But there was still a Tory sacrificial lamb who had to come along and fight this seat. And along came David Amess, who'd fought Newham, or a Newham seat, in the 1979 general election in his late 20s, and aged 31 became the Conservative candidate for Basildon. The campaign did not get off to an auspicious start. In those days, electoral law was different, and you had to have a formal adoption meeting to be legally adopted by your party as the candidate. It was an electoral requirement. And they'd hired the Northlands Community Centre in Pitsea to have the meeting. Unfortunately, there'd been a miscommunication, and when his association arrived, the place was padlocked up. There were no mobile phones in those days, so a colleague was immediately dispatched to a telephone box to try and telephone the council caretaker to get them to come and open the community centre. These events proved unsuccessful. So by now it was approaching dusk, and he was adopted as the parliamentary candidate standing under a lamppost in the community centre car park. And thus he went into battle. But David being David, he fought a feisty campaign. There was lots of music and balloons. It was all very high profile. And as he told me when we had supper a few years ago, he thought he was going to lose, but he was going to go down fighting. So in the run-up to the count, he wrote this defiant speech that he might have been defeated, but Margaret Thatcher would surely have won the election and would carry the torch forward. And so armed with this, he arrived at the election count, steeling himself for what was to come. And as honourable members will know, at an election count, there's a moment before the result is read out when the returning officer calls the candidates and agents together just to go through the result with them first to make sure there were no irregularities, no one wants a recount. So there he was, and the call went out for candidates and agents, and David walked across, and a small huddle occurred around the returning officer, who turned to David and said, "We've completed the count. There is a clear winner. Well done, Mr. Amess. You've won." And David looked at him and said, "What?" And the chap said, "You've won. You've been elected. You're the Member of Parliament for Basildon. I'm going to read it out in 5 minutes. I hope you've got your speech ready. And David looked at him in awe and said, could you just give me 1 moment? And he dashed into the gents and he ripped off some loo paper and jotted down some bullet points on this, because obviously the speech that he'd had was no longer appropriate. And he went onto the stage. He won, for the record, by 1,379 votes. And it was read out, and he observed all the courtesies, and he thanked the returning officer and the officers for conducting an efficient count, and he thanked the police for maintaining order, and then he said, I never doubted for 1 moment that I would win this seat. I always knew that by fighting an active and lively campaign, I would be elected to represent the people of Basildon in the House of Commons. And so, Madam Deputy Speaker, it was sheer chutzpah, literally, from the first moment. And those of you who knew him, he carried on like that for the rest of his career. And that is why the House loved him. And he always had great concern for all colleagues on all sides of the House. So if he were here, he would be thinking of those who are about to make their maiden speeches, and he would have said something like, don't worry, don't be nervous, you'll be absolutely fine. Yeah. And of course, you will. After all, you worked very hard to get here, even if you were not adopted under a lamppost. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's wonderful to have this debate in his name. I thank the House and the Chair for the great honour of being allowed to open it. Yeah. For all of those that begin with your first speech in Parliament here, I wish you all the very best of luck, but not too much. Thank you very much, Mark.
Yeah. Like many colleagues, David Amess was also my mentor and helped me become a good constituency MP, but he also spent time with us, especially colleagues who felt they were under threat or felt unsafe, and he gave up his time for nothing. We all miss him. Maiden speech, Daniel Francis.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, for allowing me the opportunity to make my maiden speech in this debate. It's an honour to follow the Honourable Member for Rayleigh and Wickford, having served with his brother on my local council 20 years ago. And I would wish to add to his tributes regarding Sir David Amess and Joe Cox. I would like to start by paying tribute to my predecessor, Sir David Amess, who represented our local area for 33 years, firstly in the former Erith and Crayford constituency, and then in Bexleyheath and Crayford. He took a keen interest in education, serving twice as a PPS in the Education Department. Sir David, as you know, was elected with the other Sir David in 1983, and they were close friends, and it's apt that this debate's named after Sir David. Sir David Everett was the only Conservative Member of Parliament to lose their seat in 1997, but then regain it at the second attempt in 2005, which says a great deal about his tenacity, and I wish him and Marilyn a happy and healthy retirement. I note that when he made his maiden speech in 1983, he followed and complimented the then member for Sedgefield, who of course went on to be a great Prime Minister for 10 years. And so I'd say to the Honourable Member for Rayleigh and Wickford, please feel no pressure in the years ahead. At this election, my constituency of Bexleyheath and Crayford gained parts of Northumberland Heath and West Heath wards which were previously represented by my honourable friend, the member for Erith and Thamesmead. And given the new boundaries, it's a privilege to follow former members who have represented parts of my constituency, including Jenny Adamson, Norman Dodds, Jim Wellbeloved, Sir Ted Heath, John Austin, Nigel Beard, and Teresa Pearce. It's an honour to have been elected to this House, and I'm indebted to those constituents who sent me here, and I shall work tirelessly for them, as well as those who did not vote for me. I've lived in the London Borough of Bexley for all my life, attended local schools, and served as a councillor for 20 years. My constituents include former school friends, former work colleagues, my parents who are here today, and my grandmother. My constituency is located at the south-east tip of London, with my constituents looking both west into the capital and east across the Kent boundary. My family roots are like those of many of my constituents, families from South London who moved a bit further east from the city, with my maternal roots in Southwark and my paternal roots in Plumstead. Within the constituency, we're proud of two amazing heritage assets: the Grade 1 listed Hall Place, built in 1537, and the Red House, designed by Philip Webb and William Morris in 1859. And we're also proud of our contribution to the hits of my childhood, having been the birthplace of Boy George and Kate Bush. We have an industrial past with the Thames at the north of our constituency, but today most jobs are in manufacturing, retail and hospitality. However, that past helped change history and ensure Britain is the country it is today. The Vickers Works were located in Crayford for 101 years, from 1884, and during the World Wars manufactured the Vickers machine gun, aircraft, naval gunland equipment and the casings of the Barnes-Wallis bouncing bomb of Dan Buster's fame. Famously, it was where the British aviators John Alcock and Arthur Brown manufactured the first Vickers Vimy bomber, with the first 12 manufactured in Crayford, while it was the 13th manufactured elsewhere that in 1919 made the first non-stop transatlantic flight. That history of our constituency continues today, with my constituents across Barnhurst, Bexleyheath, Crayford, Northumberland Heath, Slay Green, and the small parts of Abbey Wood, Belvedere, Erith and Welling, which I represent, working hard and delivering for our country. Every day I speak to local residents working in the public sector, and I know how grateful their neighbours are for the work they do on which we all rely. My constituents rely on train services provided by Thameslink and South Eastern, who have a depot in Slay Green where they maintain rolling stock and train their staff. And it's those railway workers who keep my constituents on the move, those commuters working in the financial and professional jobs that London relies on, but importantly in shops, restaurants, hotels, and to keep London's economy moving. And if you take a quick glance around any road in my constituency, you'll see a variety of white vans and black taxis, demonstrating how my constituents are the workers which London relies on to get them from A to B, and to the builders, the plumbers, the brickies and the lift engineers, which will help us grow our economy. But there is one set of workers on which our community really does rely, and that's our volunteers and carers. My day-to-day started like many others. I lifted my child from her bed, I changed her nappy, I dressed her, I fed her, tidied her hair, and then ensured she was in her wheelchair, ready for her transport to collect her for school. Our children are twins, but will lead very different paths in life. One talks of a future in work and the journeys she will make. The other can, after many years of work for professionals, now manage to talk, but her language is limited to about a dozen words. The eldest of our twins has cerebral palsy and a range of complex disabilities. Like other carers, the greatest concern my wife and I have is what will happen to her when we are gone. Many of us know what it was like to have to work and educate your children at home for months during the COVID pandemic. In our case, this was stretched by the fact one of our children requires full-time care. Our family network and carers were not allowed into our home, and with my wife, now thankfully recovered due to the fantastic work of our incredible NHS, undergoing chemotherapy at the time. I can assure you that in my time in this house, I will be the greatest of champions for carers and the disabled, because I really do know the challenges that families in our position face on a daily basis. Having to fight your local authority because it either hasn't transferred the monies to pay the carer or it isn't paying at a rate which meets minimum wage requirements. The constant battle to ensure your child has a wheelchair that works. The arguments over which part of the public sector will fund the person required to cut your child's food at lunchtime because the EHCP isn't clear on the matter. I could take the easy path and sit at home rather than be here taking the difficult decisions to fix the inheritance bequeathed to this government. But I believe this House really does need people like me who know how badly reform is needed in the SEN system and for the rights of carers. My constituents, like me, rely on volunteers and charities across the constituency. I'm not going to name them all because I'm bound to miss one out, but those charities know that I have the greatest of admiration for them, having worked alongside them for many, many years. They make such an important contribution across Bexleyheath and Crayford. I look forward to continuing to work with them, our faith groups, businesses and my incredible constituents to deliver the change which our community and country so desperately need. Thank you, Madam Deputy.
So very powerful indeed. I now come to Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I congratulate the new member for Bexleyheath and Crayford on his maiden speech. It's clear he's going to contribute to the work of this House in an incredible fashion. Can I also pay tribute to my honourable friend, the member for Rayleigh and Wickford, in introducing this debate. And of course, thank the leader of the House for responding to my request at Business Questions last week to properly entitle this debate as the Sir David Amess Adjournment Debate.
Well done, Bob.
And indeed, my memory of Sir David was, of course, that I persuaded him to join the Backbench Business Committee on the single basis that we would always ensure that there would be a pre-recess adjournment debate, so he could contribute to that debate. His self-interest was quite clear even then. It's also fitting that this is the first Sir David Amess adjournment debate since the release of the Grenfell inquiry report, because Sir David was my immediate predecessor as chairman of the all-party group on fire and safety. The inquiry's report is incredibly comprehensive and makes terrible reading. And I would strongly suggest that all members read at least the executive summary. The full report itself is quite daunting given the size of it. It is very clear that governments of all persuasions badly let the people down of this country, and in particular the people of Grenfell. The all-party group tried relentlessly to bring forward the urgent changes to the issues of building safety, but were refused. Justin Beer KC, representing the department at the inquiry, even apologised on behalf of the government for not listening properly to what the all-party group was saying. I'll quote Sir David: "If the government had listened to us, Grenfell would never have occurred." I'm glad that he's been vindicated, but of course I'm very sad that he's not here to listen to it. Deadly fires don't just happen. They're the result of a series of failures over a number of years across a number of levels. Although Sir Martin only mentions it once in his report, there are a number of alarming similarities with the King's Cross fire, which claimed 31 lives back in 1987. I remember vividly as a commuter into central London at the time. Sir David Fennell's report then, as Sir Martin has done now, identified the key failings over several years across many public bodies that could have prevented the fire from spreading out of control. The similarities do not end there. The inadequate fire training, the use of unsafe materials, the failings of the London Fire Brigade. It is actually alarming to see how similar these two fires are, despite being under totally different government departments. Sir Martin talks about improving the cross-government response. I wonder what would have happened had the lessons on unsafe building materials that had been learnt at King's Cross been implemented across all government departments. So whilst I welcome that the government has promised to respond to the recommendations within 6 months, we need to get the ball rolling on the changes to legislation that Sir Martin recommends, sooner rather than later. This will take a very long time to get the legislation right, get it through committee stage in both houses and onto the statute book, and then find the solutions to solve the regulatory gap as a matter of priority. We can't wait 6 months for a white paper, so I'd urge the government to consider at least this key point urgently. Let's get the legislation laid before this House as soon as possible. This leads me on to the scandal that is the remedial work required to fix buildings still coated in dangerous cladding up and down this country. The recommendations from King's Cross on the replacement of wooden escalators took until 2014 to be completed. Surely the cladding replacements can't take 27 years as well, but the start has not been great. But there's another question about this matter. Who is going to fund it and pay for it? I'm adamant that leaseholders and tenants should not be paying for this. They're the one group that's done nothing wrong. And I hope the government will actually address the specific point in response. Now, on Monday, I was pleased to be elected unopposed, an election process I welcome, as chairman of the Backbench Business Committee. A terrific honorific ability that leads me neatly to paying tribute to my predecessor in the role. Ian Minns served as chairman for 9 years and as the Member of Parliament for Gateshead for 14 years. And I'm sure that the new honourable member for Gateshead, Central and Wickham will be equally as servant-hearted for the people of that community, much as I hope my chairmanship will also live up to Ian's legacy. Now, my other role, of course, is that of chairman of the 1922 committee. Madam Deputy Speaker, you remember the role well as vice chairman. For the benefit of members wondering when the Prime Minister will face a new opponent at lunchtimes on Wednesdays, we've now concluded the second ballot of MPs on our side, with further ballots to occur after the party conference and a new leader in November. I would like to thank the somewhat smaller team of officers on the 22 than in previous years, namely the honourable members for Cotswold North, of course, who's now been elected to his august place as chairman of the PAC, and the member for Stockton West for being so efficient and helping me with the ballots over the last couple of weeks. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, I move on to transport. It's the first opportunity I've had to talk about the new part of my constituency as a result of the boundary changes. Although I'm sure Parliat will be pleased to hear, I am not going to give a history of Queensbury from 1249 to 2024.
Oh, go on. Shame. Go on. Go on.
However,
apologise.
Two interesting tidbits on the history of Queensbury Station. The branch from Wembley Park to Stanmore began life as part of the Metropolitan Railway, the final fling of the Met as a private venture. And members opposite should perhaps take note of the fact that all 4 of the tube stations in my constituency came as a result of private investment and initiative and not government diktat. When Queensbury Station was built around 90 years ago, there was no development in the area, and the company couldn't decide what to call it. Now, the actual local authority adjacent to the area was Kingsbury, so naturally they call it Queensbury. This does lead me on to the bittersweet point about Queensbury Station. Whilst it's always nice to gain it, it's yet another tube station in my constituency that does not have step-free access. Those that follow these debates closely will know I've raised the Stanmore station in particular as being in dire need of a lift, with about 3 million entries and exits per year. I'm continuing to bang the drum to the Mayor of London, TfL, the Department of Transport, that Stanmore is not step-free. In fact, it forces disabled users to wheel themselves through a car park, up a steep ramp at the other side, and even one of our great Paralympians cannot do it unaided. It is completely inadequate as a step-free entrance and needs a public lift badly to circumnavigate the 48 steps that you're, quote and unquote, meant to use on exiting or entering the station. Now, I'm disappointed my pleas seem to consistently fall upon deaf ears. However, here's a warning. I will continue to campaign for it until we get a lift at Stanmore Station and the other stations in my constituency. Now, we are all conscious in this House of the escalating situation in the Middle East, but there's a clear and present danger that if terrorists remain in Gaza, the conflict cannot have a long-term resolution and indeed could drag Hezbollah, Iran and extreme forces in the Middle East into a full-scale war with Israel, which none of us want to see. I'm therefore concerned about the several U-turns from the government that I want to see corrected. Many of those of us who are friends of Israel are alarmed at the message being sent by the government to suspend 30 arms licences. It gives the impressions in the eyes of government that Israel and Hamas are one and the same. Let us be clear, they're not. The government should not be treating them as such. I'm the chairman of the All-Party Group on Israel, and as we come to the one-year anniversary of the 7th of October attacks, which was the largest loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust, Israel needs the UK's support, not censure. On the 25th of June, the party opposite said that if they were elected, they would prescribe the IRGC, as many of us have been calling on the Conservative government to do so for a number of years.
Hear, hear.
On the 8th of July, The Guardian reported that the government will not prescribe the IRGC as a terrorist group, completely U-turning. I'm concerned that anything else will simply be a cop-out, particularly given that the Israel-Iran tensions are escalating. Another issue in terms of the government action needs to be on defence spending. We've had commitments from the previous government to raise defence spending to 2.5% and then 3% of GDP. We now seem to have a roadmap from the government to spending 2.5%. Given the challenges our defence industry has, I think we need to take appropriate action. Madam Deputy Speaker, in the last Parliament, my Supported Housing Regulatory Oversight Act passed royal assent, and it mandates the government to establish a supported housing advisory panel within 12 months of the date of the Act being passed. The sifting date was listed as the 31st of July, but nothing's been heard since. As of the 30th of August, this is overdue and technically puts the Secretary of State in breach of the law. So I would urge her to get on the job underway and make sure we get this committee underway. I'll also mention one or two other things before I sit down, Madam Deputy Speaker, because I'm conscious that other colleagues will want to contribute. Firstly, the potential free trade deal with India. The last government promised a free trade deal by Diwali. They forgot which year of Diwali it would be. Both sides of the negotiations decided that we would put on hold the negotiations because of elections here and, of course, elections in India. They're now over. The governments have settled. So let's get on with the job of making sure we get that free trade agreement that everyone wants. Now, I raised at Business Questions earlier the issue of the tobacco and vapes bill, which I wholeheartedly supported in the last Parliament. Javid Khan's review on achieving a smoke-free 2030 ought to be implemented in full, and I hope that the government will now take on board the various amendments that were proposed cross-party to that bill so that we can ensure that we get over any objections from the industry and progress that swiftly. Equally, on the Holocaust Memorial, I'm delighted that the government has actually taken this forward on the Holocaust Memorial and Learning Centre in Victoria Gardens. I strongly support it, and I also chair your party group for Holocaust Memorial. We heard recently from Holocaust survivor Eve, who reiterated our plea to get the memorial built before the survivors unfortunately pass away. We're seeing huge increases in anti-Semitism, and that is clearly scandal. On the issue of Bangladesh, there's not been a government statement on Bangladesh, yet we've seen the government in Bangladesh displaced. We've seen human rights catastrophe taking place, particularly against the Hindu population in Bangladesh, yet we've heard nothing from the government. So I hope that we'll hear from the government about what they're going to do to safeguard Bangladeshi citizens. Finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, in terms of local issues, I just want to raise the issue of Edgware Towers. There's a proposal in the neighbouring constituency to build 29 blocks of high-density multi-storey flats. 29 blocks, the tallest of which would be 29 storeys, and 20 would be above 20 storeys high. This is on a cramped area and on a particular area. The one thing about this that is most important is the proposal to build the bus garage for 100 buses under a 29-storey tower block. Given the fires that take place, and these will be electric buses, given the fires that have taken place on electric buses already, we can't think of what the consequences could be under circumstances. The London Fire Brigade have objected, and actually this should be ruled out of order straight away as a planning application. Finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like to thank all colleagues in the House, those in the other place, the staff in our teams, the security teams, the catering teams, and everyone else who plays a key part in keeping everything afloat. I also wish everyone celebrating a very happy Rosh Hashanah. And as ever, I end by paying tribute to my great friend and colleague. We all miss you, David. I hope that everyone has a good recess, enjoys their party conferences, and finds some time to relax with friends and family.
Yeah. We have 30 members wishing to contribute, so if everybody considers their speeches to be around 5 or 6 minutes, that means that everybody can indeed get in. Maiden speech, Olivia Bailey.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I start by thanking the Honourable Member for Rayleigh and Wickford for a wonderful tribute to Sir David Amess, and also thank him for his kind words to those of us sitting nervously on these benches today. Thank you very much. Madam Deputy Speaker, I am proud to be the first ever Member of Parliament for the new constituency of Reading West and Mid-Berkshire. The most populous part of my constituency is the village of Tilehurst, where I live with my family. Tilehurst has always been a place of skilled labour. Our name reflects our history in the manufacture of tiles, but today we are proud to be a place of brewers, beauticians and builders. And in this place, I will always seek to stand up for small businesses and the self-employed. My constituency also has a proud history of defending our great country. There are many military families, and we are also the home of the atomic weapons establishment at Aldermaston and Burfield. I am really proud of the work that my constituents do there, and I will always support our nuclear deterrent. We are an unusual constituency in that we are made up exclusively of villages and hamlets, discounting our official overlap with Reading. There are more than 70 settlements, most nestled in the North Wessex Downs national landscape. The rivers, fields and architecture around Pangbourne and Basildon are said to be the inspiration for E.H. Shepard's beautiful illustrations of the wind in the willows. And my constituency, Madam Deputy Speaker, is truly the quintessential English countryside. And strolling through Streatley or Yattendon, Compton, East and West Ilsley, Mortimer, Frilsham are perhaps the most picturesque leaflet rounds of any constituency. Although eyebrows were raised when I asked one of my activists to take a trip to the hamlet called World's End. Although thankfully they were met with beauty rather than eternal doom. I want to thank the many activists who worked so hard to elect me to this place. And I want to thank everyone who placed their trust in me at the ballot box, many voting Labour for the first time. I will work tirelessly to live up to that trust and to fight for everyone in my constituency, no matter how they voted. I know that my predecessors sought to do the same, and I also want to thank them for their service. The majority of my constituency was previously represented by Sir Alok Sharma. He was a good constituency MP, held in high regard by many locally, and he was also a tireless campaigner in the battle against climate change, most notably as president of COP26, and I wish him all the best in the other place. I must also mention the last Labour MP for Reading West, Martin Salter. Martin served for over a decade and gave me one of my first tastes of politics as I undertook my work experience in his office. He remains a force within the constituency, as I'm sure you can all imagine, as a passionate campaigner for the protection of our waterways, in particular our fragile and precious chalk streams. My constituency also contains areas previously represented by Laura Farris and John Redwood, and I would like to put on record my thanks to them both for their commitment and public service. Madam Deputy Speaker, while the rural villages of Berkshire may not be traditional Labour territory, I think my constituency shares the values of this new government. We are a place of service to our country, to our land, to each other. We are a place where people work hard, enriching our economy, our community and our families. And we are a place of opportunity, where our young people can get a great start. In this place, I am determined to do everything in my power to embody that service and to support our communities to prosper. Madam Deputy Speaker, my political passion was sparked in the corridors of my school, where government policy in Section 28 told me that I should be ashamed of who I was. But my commitment to public service, that came from my parents. My dad, a police officer, known as Red Roy, because of his belief in building relationships with the community, not simply asserting power, and who first took me out delivering leaflets for the Labour Party. And my mum, an English teacher, who would always fight the corner of even the most badly behaved pupils, and who instilled in me the determination captured in her favourite book that you never really understand a person until you consider things from their point of view. I have spent my career trying to honour their contributions. I have developed policy solutions to improve our public services, reconnect the police with their communities, and tackle discrimination. And I've sought to put the public at the heart of our politics through my work conducting public opinion research. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, the political is ultimately personal. It was political progress that enabled my wife and I to marry and to build our own family. And my political flame, sparked at school, burns now for my 2 boys and for all young people still in our care system. And it burns most fiercely as I hold the hand of my mum, being taken from me by Alzheimer's while being let down by the state. I am very proud to find myself here today, Madam Deputy Speaker, and my 2 boys are very proud as well. The problem is, having spent the election telling their teachers to vote Labour, they are now telling all of their friends that I'm some sort of supreme leader. It may be funny, Madam Deputy Speaker, but I am at pains to remind them that the opposite is true. I am a servant, and in the years I have in this place, I hope to continue the hard work and dedication of the many men and women who, little by little, have fought for change. Thank you.
Beautifully said. So, Julian.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and may I congratulate the honourable members for Bexleyheath and Crayford and for Reading West and Berkshire, because, mid-Berkshire I should say, because it is a daunting thing to undertake a maiden speech, but both of them did it with panache and with passion, and we on this side of the House are grateful to them for sharing their insights with us on this very, I hope, non-partisan occasion. They rightly spoke about the aspects of their local constituencies in which they take pride, and that gives me a cue to put in a brief word for the Waterside Arts Festival, which has been going on this week. Sadly, I've had to miss most of it, being up here in Westminster, but last Saturday, on a very rainy day, I was privileged to see a few of the offerings of this cultural feast, which is supported by Culture in Common and the Arts Council of England. In particular, a remarkable pair of acrobatic dance artists, Olivia Quayle and Jan Patska, who operate under the title of Jolie Vian, in which one artist uses the body of the other as a sort of climbing frame, ultimately ending up with her standing unsupported on one foot on the head of the other artist. That's something I've never seen even on television, let alone live, and it was quite impressive on a rainy Saturday afternoon in Hythe in Hampshire. There was a theme also of cartoonists, and a remarkable talk, a fascinating talk by Clive Goddard about not only the technique, but the effort involved in a cartoonist in ensuring that his or her precarious life as a freelancer somehow makes economic sense. Now, next year, Madam Deputy Speaker, will mark the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War, so it can be seen that anyone old enough to have fought in that terrible conflict must now be at or very close to their 100th birthday. On suitable occasions, I've previously referred to some of my friends amongst the wartime and early post-war veterans who are now no longer with us. They've included World War II Mosquito pilot Doug Gregory, DFC, who flew a replica World War I biplane fighter at air displays until the age of 90 and died in 2015 at the age of 92. Fleet Air on telegraphist air gunner Norman Dicky Richardson, DSM, who flew from HMS Victorious in the Far East and who died in 2020, aged 96, and my late father-in-law, Malayan emergency supply drop navigator Frank Souness, DFC, who died at the end of 2022, aged 92. So it is not surprising, but still sad, that this year has seen the passing of the last of my Second World War friends, all of whom lived in New Forest East. There was Marion Loveland, who reached the magnificent age of 102, a lady of grace, poise and elegance, who was born on the 6th of June 1921 and was a Wren Third Officer at HMS Collingwood on her birthday in 1944 as D-Day began. Her moving and dignified television interview recorded earlier this year, shortly before her passing, and telling how her fiancé, a decorated Royal Marines commando, was killed landing on Sword Beach on 6th of June, D-Day and her birthday, is still available to view on the ITVX website, and I commend it to honourable and right honourable members. Then there was the wonderful Liz Gregory, the widow of Doug, who I mentioned earlier, who helped him build his replica SE-5A World War I biplane fighter in their back garden, as one does, and unfailingly supported him in all his flying adventures and escapades. This great lady lived to the age of 95, and you can read all about her in Doug Gregory's fascinating autobiography, Aero Addict, published by Little Knoll Press. And if I weren't allowed, if I weren't forbidden from brandishing props in this presentation, I would wave it around at that point. Finally, we've just lost Dr. Arthur Page at the age of 100. Just last month, a comrade of Dicky Richardson in 849 Squadron Fleet Air on HMS Victorious, Arthur also flew on the famous Palembang raids against the oil refineries in Sumatra and on many other dangerous missions in the Far East. Both the Times and the Daily Telegraph published remarkable obituaries of this fine and gallant officer who quietly resumed his interrupted medical studies after the war and served as a GP in Totton in my constituency for more than 30 years. He too continued to fly until the age of 75. And you can read about Arthur's and Dicky's adventures in Palembang and beyond, which again I'm not allowed to brandish in this chamber, but it was written by the late Mike Roussel and is eminently worthwhile read. Although all these outstanding individuals have now gone, the example which they set will long continue to inspire those who knew them and generations yet to come. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, in the time remaining, I shall return to a continuing constitutional issue which I previously raised in the debate on the King's Speech. With the election of select committee chairs having now just taken place, we must hope that the Prime Minister, after consulting with the Leader of the Opposition, will soon present to the House nominations for membership of the Intelligence and Security Committee of Parliament. This matter is pressing, not just because the committee was about to complete a key inquiry when the election was called, but because while there is no committee, its dedicated expert staff are left vulnerable to the tender mercies of some of those whom the committee oversees. This is of serious concern. For the benefit of new MPs, I should explain that the Intelligence and Security Committee, or ISC, is a cross-party committee of both Houses of Parliament created by statute. Under the Justice and Security Act of 2013, the ISC has the legal responsibility for overseeing the UK's intelligence community on behalf of Parliament and its members after confirmation in both Houses, choose their own chairman from amongst their 9 members. Right Honourable and Honourable Members may be surprised to learn that the ISC's office, a very small number of staff, belongs to the Cabinet Office, despite the ISC overseeing several sensitive organisations within the Cabinet Office. And they would be right to be surprised. It is indeed a fundamental conflict of interest. And that's why, at the time of the Justice and Security Act of 2013, the Cabinet Office was supposed to be only the temporary home of the office of the ISC. Yet here we are over 10 years later with the committee's staff still beholden to, vulnerable within, unfairly pressured and even victimised by the very part of the executive it is charged with overseeing. Now, the executive should not be able to constrain and control the committee's democratic oversight on behalf of Parliament by exerting control over the committee's small staff team to prevent them doing their job independently. Such control means that part of the Cabinet Office can and does starve the team of resources so that the ISC staff are unable to fulfil the committee's legal responsibilities. This is in complete contravention and disregard of a clear ministerial undertaking given by the then Deputy Prime Minister, my right honourable friend for Hertsmere, before the election. It also means that they can stigmatise and penalise the ISC staff with damaging consequences for their careers in the civil service. The outgoing members of the ISC value the committee's staff very highly indeed, and we found such treatment to be unacceptable. In the last Parliament, the committee therefore formally resolved by a unanimous vote across all three political parties on the ISC that it is essential for parliamentary democracy and its scrutiny system that the committee's office must move out from under the control of the executive, that is, the Cabinet Office, and should be established instead as an independent, quotes, body corporate, unquotes, with a link to Parliament rather than to the executive. That unanimous decision was confirmed by the members of the committee at its meeting on the 19th of March 2024, following expert and authoritative external advice that it is indeed within the ISC's power to take such a step and to determine the suitable mechanisms for implementing it. This constitutional change, essential to protect the separation of powers, is easy to achieve. It requires a very short amendment to the Justice and Security Act to change the status of the ISC's office. The amendment would establish an independent office to support the Intelligence and Security Committee of Parliament in order to safeguard the independence of the committee itself. It had been hoped that the amendment would be included in the new legislative programme. Unfortunately, but unsurprisingly, in the committee's absence, the Cabinet Office has hitherto managed to block it. However, this is to underestimate the previous members of the committee from both sides of the House and in both chambers who are convinced that the committee's office cannot and must not continue to be controlled by the Cabinet Office. There is already in the legislative programme an obvious vehicle for achieving the necessary change. The Commonwealth Parliamentary Association and International Committee of the Red Cross (brackets status close brackets) bill is designed to change the status of those two organisations. It's therefore the obvious place to include a short amendment to the Justice and Security Act to change the status of the committee's organisation too. As a measure to secure democratic oversight, I'm confident that it should and would secure cross-party support in both houses. Prior to the election, both the then government and the then opposition seemed to accept that this reform was needed, which does rather beg the question as to why it has not happened yet. I trust, in conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the government will ensure that it isn't being blocked somewhere by forces unknown, and will ensure that it is now taken forward together with the emergency uplift in resourcing, which was approved by the then Deputy Prime Minister before the general election, but which has been disregarded by the Cabinet Office since. This is urgently required if the new committee is to have sufficient, efficient staff to be able to meet and function fully when it is reconstituted. The government should recognise that this cannot wait. Too much valuable time has been lost already.
Yeah. Thank you indeed. Maiden speech, Satvir Kaur.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I wanted to start by congratulating my honourable friends and members on some fantastic maiden speeches today, but also the many I've heard since the election in July. They've made me proud to be British. However, notwithstanding these incredible speeches and hearing about the amazing and beautiful places across the UK, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd still like to argue that Southampton, the place I was born and bred, where I've always lived, had the honour to represent as the Member of Parliament for Southampton Test, is still the best city on earth. Listen, I know it's a bold claim. Many and some of you have heard me make it before. But Southampton is where the world meets Britain. We have helped shape the world and continue to do so. From the pilgrims that set sail from Southampton on the Mayflower over 400 years ago in search of a new life in America, to being the home of the Spitfire that helped defeat fascism in Europe during World War II. It was the University of Southampton that invented the internet as we know it today. And were these achievements not enough, Southampton also gave the world the fish finger sandwich. You're welcome. We are a city rich with culture, from our medieval walls that protected our nation in times of conflict, our award-winning parks, most notably Southampton Common, which are the green lungs of our city, to our renowned art galleries and theatre, the Mayflower. Southampton is where Jane Austen was schooled and lived, that inspired some of her masterpieces. And even today, Southampton is continuing to produce great talent, from the singer Craig David to MasterChef winner Shalina Permalu. Southampton is also a world-leading maritime city that is integral to the UK economy. The Port of Southampton handles over £71 billion worth of trade every year, while also serving as the busiest cruise port in Europe. We are a city of political firsts. Many will know that our country's first Prime Minister of colour is from Southampton. I was the first female Sikh council leader in the UK, and the former MP for Southampton Test, my good friend Dr. Alan Whitehead, was the first and I believe the only politician to have a song dedicated to them by none other than Led Zeppelin. Wow. Clearly, they have a whole lot of love for Alan. Now, paying tribute to Alan Whitehead as my predecessor in this chamber is an honour. He has been one of those unique politicians that was universally liked, valued and respected on both sides. His knowledge on climate change and green energy is unparalleled. He is essentially the Taylor Swift of the energy sector and leaves behind a legacy that not only shaped, that not only shaped government policy on energy right now, but will benefit future generations, for which we all owe him a huge debt of gratitude. As I approach my 40th birthday in the coming days, I know, thank you. It's incredible to think that Alan has served our city for as long as I've been alive, first as leader of the council and then as a member of parliament. He has done so with unwavering dedication, integrity and kindness, meaning that he will be sorely missed by many, and I am acutely aware I have very big shoes to fill. Alan and the former Member of Parliament for Southampton Itchen, John Denham, have both played an instrumental part in me reaching this place today. Indeed, John, on a visit to my school fair, awarded me first prize when I was only 8 years old during a fancy dress costume party. I don't know what it was about me dressing up as a clown that made John think I may be one day destined for a career in politics. The truth is, I owe so much to my incredible city and the remarkable people of Southampton who gave me the opportunity to be where I am today. Southampton has made me who I am. As someone that grew up in one of Southampton's most deprived communities, I saw firsthand the importance of community and the service to others. Southampton has a unique ability to come together when it's needed most, and I have been inspired time and time again by the many examples set by our faith organisations, local businesses, and incredible local charities. From Love Southampton, a faith-based initiative, to businesses such as the Saints Pub on the Millbrook Estate, and charities like Yellow Door, No Limits, and Saints Foundation, all work tirelessly to make Southampton a better place and remind us that when you lift our poorest and most vulnerable in society, it lifts everyone. Our city's diversity has made me realise that we are the great place we are because of it. Historic but modern, dynamic, creative, and so much more. I may stand here as our constituency's first female MP and that of colour, but I know there are many more before me that have paved the way, and I feel that responsibility in here too, and their weight on my shoulders. As a graduate of both of Southampton's world-class universities, the University of Southampton and then Solent University, I know both put our city on the map and are institutions that inspire, innovate and push boundaries. They have helped me and our city be more forward-thinking and outward-looking. As a Saints fan, supporting our team, I must confess, is a bit of an emotional roller coaster that has taught me, above anything, enormous resilience. We're thankfully back in the Premier League, but whether we're winning or losing, together as one city, we march on. So, I'm so incredibly proud of Southampton and everything it represents. But like any major city, we know we face challenges. 1 in every 3 children live below the poverty line, and life expectancy can drop 10 years simply by crossing a bridge, with public services on their knees and many families I represent struggling. That is why I want to be part of the renewal that this Labour government is promising and want to rebuild the services my communities rely on. From a decent home becoming a basic human right, to people feeling safe on our streets and neighbourhoods again, having access to healthcare when it's needed, to protecting our environment and rivers. Another key priority of mine is to ensure that we create opportunities for all and include the excluded. We know that children from poor areas, ethnic minority backgrounds, or those with disabilities are not less talented. They are simply given less opportunities. Britain's talent is spread evenly across our communities and country. If we are to realise our potential, we must ensure those opportunities are spread more evenly too. These challenges won't be easy to resolve, but the people of Southampton, like so many across Britain, are rightfully proud and ambitious of themselves, their families and country. It's why we need a government that is equally ambitious and committed to unlocking the potential and opportunities of places like Southampton. I know that as a city, we stand ready to seize this moment and thrive and grow. And the drive, passion, compassion, togetherness and determination of the people of Southampton will see it through. So to end with, I say directly to them, I will be forever grateful for you making this daughter of market stall trader that grew up in our inner city on free school meals your Member of Parliament. You are the very best of me, and I am a product of every opportunity you have given me. I shall never take that trust for granted, and I will spend every day in here and beyond championing our great city, fighting for it and helping us reach our enormous potential. Thank you.
Paul Holmes.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it's a pleasure to speak in this debate, and I think it's very poignant today that this debate has been called the Sir David Amess debate. I knew David well, and the last time I saw Sir David was on the day before he died. I was in Qatar with him in a country that he loved and advocated for many years in his career. I arrived and he was leaving. As I said, "You're leaving?" I'm just arriving. He said, "It's nothing personal. I've got my surgery tomorrow. I can't miss it." He was somebody that embodied his constituency and his constituents first. Yeah. And that is something that we all across this House share, and we remember him particularly today. It's a pleasure. I will.
Thank you. Madam Deputy Speaker, thank you to the honourable gentleman for giving way. I, as the now MP Member of Parliament for Southend, West and Lee, on behalf of my constituents, I have to say, on the doorstep, everybody knew Sir David Amess, or they thought they knew Sir David Amess, and that is the sign of a fantastic constituency MP. So, whilst we may be politically different, Sir David was an amazing constituency MP, and in his name we are now a city, and that will continue to be recognised by the now City Day, which the City Council are putting in place. So I join the honourable member over there in recognising Sir David and the dedication he gave to his constituents.
Can I say to the honourable gentleman, I know that he's a new MP, I think that is a intervention that shows the measure of the man that he will be in this House over the next 4 years. And if he, judging by the way in which I responded to a debate that he participated in yesterday, I know that he'll be a vocal advocate for his constituency, and he will make Sir David very proud. It's a genuine honour to follow the Honourable Lady for Southampton Test on her maiden speech, and I declare an interest in that I know the Honourable Lady very, very well. We were both Southampton lead members and Southampton councillors on Southampton City Council. We both graduated from Southampton, and the honourable member, right honourable gentleman who's honourable member who's responding for the government at the end of the debate, I'm sure it's coming, he should probably close his folder now and leave this out of his notes, because I was actually the best man at the Honourable Lady's wedding. I have video evidence on my phone of how good she is at dancing. I have video evidence on my phone of how bad her husband Ben is at dancing. And I have video evidence on my phone of how good a partier she is at 2 o'clock in the morning. But she is what I often call her. She is Mrs. Southampton, a city that we both care about genuinely and passionately. She was a groundbreaking council leader. She cares about her city, and she does care about her constituents, and she will be a groundbreaking MP. I will just remind her that I did secure more votes in Southampton Test than she did when I stood in 2017, but I did lose by 12,500, so she did a lot better than me. Madam Deputy Speaker, as is custom, I'd just like to raise a few issues on behalf of my constituents, if I may, in this debate. And I promise I won't take too long, as I know that there are other members that want to make their maiden speeches, and today is a day for them, particularly the Honourable Gentleman, the member for Winchester, my constituency neighbour, and the Honourable Gentleman, the member for Exeter and Exmouth East, I think is right. I'm watching him because he's in my flock in the opposition whip's office, so I will be marking his homework later. And I know that he has two very, very special people in the gallery waiting who probably want a cup of tea, so I will keep this speech very, very short. Look, I've always spoken in these debates because I think it's very important to be able to raise issues on behalf of my constituents very quickly, but also very thoroughly, hopefully. And the first is something that I've been campaigning on for 5 years in this House, and that is the accessibility for all funding that the last government awarded to a number of stations in the last government, and the vital importance of making sure that our train stations are accessible to those that are less ably bodied than ourselves, and for people who have children, particularly with pushchairs. There are two stations in my constituency, Hedge End train station and Swanwick train station, that were awarded funding under the Accessibility for All funding by the last government. It was a 5-year campaign, 2 adjournment debates, We finally got the funding, and a letter under this government has now told me that the feasibility study funding is under review. That is a disappointment to me and my constituents in an area where we have excessive development, might I say, built by the leadership of my local council. But it is a real difficulty for my constituents as that area grows to get to work and get home from work at Hedge End. They have to get off at Southampton Airport Parkway 9 miles away. I really hope that the whip on duty who will be responding will speak to the Department of Transport to see that members across this House who have had stations awarded that accessibility funding have urgent clarification on whether that funding will go forward, because many people in our constituencies will rely on that, and I am disappointed that the government has chosen to take the decision that they have to place that under review. It's not a massive amount of money in Hedge End. I don't want to hear about a 22 million black hole. This is not enough money to make a difference on that in-year spending, and that's the last party political point I will make, but that's a very important issue in my constituency and for many constituencies across the United Kingdom. The next issue that I'd like to bring up is broadband and a mobile phone signal in a new area of my new constituency of Hamble Valley in Whiteley. A lot of new developments have been built there. It has the infrastructure of a number of old chocolate box villages which I inherited from the old constituency of Winchester. And along the Kerbridge corridor and down into Burridge, many people have bought homes, young professionals have bought homes, and in this world working from home, want to be able to conduct their business and their work life at home. A number of them are receiving fines because they can't pay their bills. A number of them are getting into trouble because they literally cannot turn up to work. And I'm very interested to hear from the government going forward on the investment, maybe not necessarily today, but whether we could have some government allocated time to debate this really important issue about digital deserts across the United Kingdom. It's a really vitally important thing. My new constituency is more rural than my old one, and it's something that I have picked up across the whole of the constituency as I've been the Member of Parliament since July the 5th. And lastly, Madam Deputy Speaker, you'll be pleased to hear, I just want to raise an issue that the government will hear from me in a number of debates, hopefully over the next 5 years, and that is that there needs to be a much-needed walk-in centre in Whiteley, in my constituency, and that we have a fantastic local community hospital called Fareham Community Hospital, which has a great diagnostic team and actually does open its doors to the local community and takes some of that pressure off of the primary care services that we have from other areas of the constituency. But we do need to have more services at it. It is a fantastic site. It has the capability under its excellent leadership and staff to be able to provide more primary care, more acute care, and I hope that the government will look at allocating funding for a walk-in centre at Fareham Community Hospital and in Whiteley Shopping Centre. Very, very much lastly, Madam Deputy Speaker, can I, as is custom on these occasions, many people who are watching from the gallery and many people that watch us on the television, if they are one of those people, I suspect it's not very many, what they don't see is the hard work of the staff of this House, particularly my office staff, who are paid by me, so they should be expected to do all the hard work, but the House staff, who are really important, the clerks, the doorkeepers who make sure that I get to meetings from time to time and make sure I know where I'm going, and on new members will find them particularly useful, but all of the catering staff and the people that make our life here easier. Can I wish them a wonderful break as we go and argue it out at our party conferences. I hope they get a rest, and can I wish all members across this whole House, representing the vast array of different parties that we've seen at the last election, a wonderful summer, and go and have a good argument at various seaside locations across the United Kingdom.
Wow. I must then on record thank the staff in the tea room, in particular Margaret, Godfrey and Gemma, otherwise they won't make me a good cup of tea. I now come to another maiden speech, Sally Jameson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It is an honour to deliver my maiden speech in the Sir David Amess Adjournment Debate and to follow on from some truly inspirational maiden speeches from across the House and lastly the speech from the Honourable Member for Hamble Valley. Madam Deputy Speaker, it was the honour of my life to be elected to represent Doncaster Central constituency, my home, the place where I was born and a place I care deeply about. Doncaster's industrial history is one of transformation and innovation, shaping us into the town, and now city, that we are today. In the Industrial Revolution, we became renowned for railway manufacturing. We built iconic trains like the Mallard and the Flying Scotsman, which are still a source of great pride. We also have a long and deep mining history, which significantly shaped our local economy, community and heritage. And only the other week, I was at the Mark and Main Memorial Gardens in Armthorpe for their annual commemoration of the miners who died there, reminding us all of their sacrifice, but also of the community that they helped to build, which is still woven into the spirit of Doncaster today. And we also have much to celebrate. This week, young chefs from the DN1 Deli and Dining Room are at the World Skills Culinary Arts Final in France. We have exciting and innovative companies like Clean Power Hydrogen and a Gemma Spark, and a young generation ready to shape our future, like Millie and Emily from Hallcross Sixth Form, who did their work experience on my campaign. From our racecourse, where the St Ledger takes place this weekend, a quick plug there, to our beautiful mansion house and our sensational market. We may be a new city, but we have a long and rich history, which makes me proud to say that I am from Doncaster. Whilst we have much to be proud of, I must also recognise that Doncaster has faced a number of challenges in the last 14 years, with cuts to local government and a number of broken promises. But there are opportunities to grasp. The Labour government's commitment to making Britain a clean energy superpower will not only bring down the soaring bills people in Doncaster face, but bring greater energy security and also bring the opportunity of a new green industrial future with the Great British Energy Company. As a Labour and cooperative MP, I am particularly proud that as part of that mission, we will deliver a local power plan that will give community at its heart to empower people and places where they live. I'm sure that we in Doncaster will seize on this new industrial strategy to forge our future and build our city's legacy. I am also determined to work alongside our fantastic council leadership, Mayor Ros Jones and Deputy Mayor Glyn Jones, the brilliant Doncaster Chamber and my parliamentary colleagues across the city as we work to get our airport reopened and ensure that it thrives, as well as getting the health service and hospital that we so desperately need and deserve. Madam Deputy Speaker, I couldn't let this speech pass without also paying tribute to my incredible predecessor, Baroness Winterton of Doncaster. Baroness Winterton is a formidable politician, an incredible woman and a dear friend. She served as a government minister across a number of departments, as well as a long-serving opposition chief whip and, of course, latterly as Deputy Speaker of this House. Doncaster is a better place for having had Baroness Winterton as our MP for 27 years. And whilst I know I will never be able to live up to her legendary shoe collection, I do hope that I am able to continue her legacy of service to the people of Doncaster Central and to this House. Madam Deputy Speaker, it is a great source of pride of me personally to be one of only 2 prison officers elected to Parliament and to be one of the only POA branch chairs. So today I want to acknowledge my former colleagues in His Majesty's Prison Service across the country who are doing an incredibly difficult job in increasingly difficult circumstances. For too long, the work of prison staff has gone unnoticed and without reference to the outside world, and I am determined that I can change this with my election to this House and my appointment as PPS to the Ministry of Justice. And with that, I want to pay particular reference to the prisons in my area. Firstly, HMP Doncaster in my own constituency, and in Doncaster East and the Isle of Axholme, I want to pay tribute to HMP Lindome and HMP and YOI Hatfield. And finally, and very much saving the best till last, I want to pay tribute to staff at HMP and YOI Moorland, where it has been a privilege to serve for over 6 years with some of the bravest and most dedicated people I have ever met. People who take on workplace challenges that most could not bear to think of. People who, no matter what danger you are in, are by your side. And when, in moments of peril, you know you don't need to look behind your shoulder to see what's there because your colleagues have always got your back. To work in a place that is fraught with so many dangers and so many difficulties and still feel safe is a testament to the people with whom you work. And so today, Madam Deputy Speaker, I pay tribute to the prison staff at HMP and YOI Moorland for their commitment to our service and their friendship, which will stay with me throughout my time in this House and indeed for the rest of my life. The criminal justice and prison system has also highlighted to me there are many things we still need to do to ensure that children get the best start. And one area which needs urgent work is the children's care system. Sadly, there are a disproportionate number of children who are care experienced in our criminal justice system, and they make up around a quarter of the overall prison population. This goes to show the urgent need for us to address the fact that we are failing so many of the most vulnerable children, leaving them targets to predators and criminal gangs. And we are failing to give them the start in life that we would expect for our own family and our own friends. In this area, along with so many other areas, including economic growth and restoring our services in Doncaster and across the country, change must come. And I will be ensuring that I use every day during my time in this House to speak up and be a part of this change the new government will bring to serve my constituents in Doncaster Central and bring the prosperity, the public services and the progress that we deserve. Thank you.
Maiden speech, Freddie van Mierlo.
Very well pronounced. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. May I add my thoughts to the comments made about Sir David Amess. And I'm also grateful to the Right Honourable Member for Rayleigh and Wickford for alerting me to the Westminster dog competition. My two Shiba Inus looking on to this debate will be very excited about that. I'd like to add my congratulations to the Honourable Member for Doncaster Central on her maiden speech, whose passion for her constituency is clear. I'm looking forward to visiting HMB Huntercombe in my own constituency and paying tribute to those prison staff there. I'd like to also give thanks to my predecessor, John Howell, who represented the constituency for 16 years before stepping down. I'm sure the whole House will join me in wishing him well as he recovers from a stroke. Amongst John Howell's achievements was his commitment to the Council of Europe, leading the UK delegation for many years. It is sad now to see Conservative leadership hopefuls calling for the UK to step back from the Council of Europe by leaving the European Court of Human Rights, a move that would put us alongside Belarus, Russia and the Vatican as the only non-member European nations. It is an honour to be the new MP for Henley and Thame, a new constituency made up largely of the former Henley seat that was last Liberal in 1910. In the intervening period, the constituency has also played host to well-known members of this House, including most famously Michael Heseltine and the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Whilst these are some very well-known names, I'm very much looking forward to making my own distinct contribution to this House. I can only hope to emulate my relative Hans van Mierlo, founder of the Dutch Liberal Party D66, who exited government more respected and popular than when he entered, a rarity in modern politics. I won't make comment on which of my predecessors achieved that feat and which did not. The new name of the constituency now recognises the town of Thame as one of the two main towns of the constituency alongside Henley-on-Thames. As well as hosting two stunning chocolate box market towns, the constituency is characterised by the Chiltern National Landscape, its iconic escarpment, and is bisected by a section of the historic Ridgeway National Trail. Henley-on-Thame is also host to a significant portion of the Oxford Greenbelt and is crisscrossed by an abundance of well-cared-for villages and hamlets. Villages such as the wonderful Waterstock and Waterperry in the north of the constituency, an aptly named Christmas Common that had supplied and decorated Christmas trees to number 10 for many years. Watlington makes up the constituency's lesser-known third town, but nevertheless is known locally for its vibrant high street and welcoming community. It is also the town that I have had the sincerest pleasure of representing as County and District Councillor since 2021 and 2023, respectively. The River Thames and Thame and their chalk stream tributaries are not only define much of the physical landscape of the constituency, but also the communities that live there. Henley is, of course, home to the Royal Regatta, an annual event that fills residents with pride. This year there is much to be proud of as we welcome our Olympic and Paralympic heroes back to Oxfordshire. However, in recent years, the river has been filled with something altogether more sinister. Rowers treat the water as a toxic substance, meticulously cleaning hands and covering mouths while they row. Still, this isn't enough to stop the steady flow of reports of serious illness following encounters with the waste-filled water. The shameful sewage crisis cuts deep in Henley and Thame, with the Henley Town Council declaring recently no confidence in Thames Water in a precedent-setting vote. I join the Town Council now in declaring no confidence in Thames Water in this chamber and call for proper root and branch reform. I am honoured to be the member representing RAF Benson and its residents, and I'd like to pay tribute to the men and women of the armed forces who served this country so ably. The constituency has considerable and proud military history, dating back to include the Battle of Charlegrove Field in 1643. Exactly 300 years later, construction started on Charlegrove Airfield, from which reconnaissance missions were flown in preparation for the invasion of occupied Europe. Later, US Army Pathfinders were set off from Charlegrove, dropping into Holland as our Allied forces sought to liberate my father's hometown of Arnhem as part of Operation Market Garden. That same airfield now hosts the world's leading manufacturer of of ejector seats and fighter aircraft. Sadly, the airfield was sold off to Holmes England under the Conservatives and forced into an unpopular local plan as a site allocated for a new town. I will continue to support residents in their fight to keep Charlegrove a village and protect its heritage in defence. I'd like to close with a few words of thanks to my wonderful wife, who has put up with so much from me as I set about reversing 114 years of Conservative rule in Henley and Thame. I'm feeling extremely privileged to stand in this chamber, but whatever the future holds, I will have no greater privilege than being married to my wife. I trust that in committing these sentiments to the public record, I can now correct for my failure to mention her in my 6 a.m. acceptance speech.
I'm not sure that's the get-out clause he's hoping for. Maiden speech, Phil Brickell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And as the first Labour Member of Parliament for Bolton West in almost a decade, it is a privilege to serve my constituents and speak in this debate under your chairship. May I also say it is an honour to speak in the Sir David Amess Adjournment Debate. And I want to extend my thanks to the Honourable Member for Rayleigh and Wickford for opening this debate and his very kind words. As a new MP, I would like to pay tribute to my predecessor, Chris Green, who I know always tried his best for the people of Bolton West. And it's a great honour to be elected alongside my colleagues, the members for Bolton North East and Bolton South and Walkden. The first time in 9 years that Bolton has elected 3 Labour Members of Parliament, and I look forward to working with them to realise my ambitions for a healthier, more prosperous constituency. Over the years, Bolton West has a long tradition of pioneering Labour Members of Parliament. Baroness Anne Taylor served Bolton West from 1974 to 1983, and in her maiden speech, she noted the vital role government can play in addressing regional inequalities. And she also highlighted the need for civic pride in our towns. Both themes which 50 years later continue to resonate with my constituents. Anne still serves in the other place. I'm proud to call her a friend. She is a true inspiration, and I pay tribute to her lifetime of public service. More recently, Ruth Kelly was first elected to represent Bolton West in 1997, before going on to serve in the Cabinet. And most recently, Julie Hilling served as MP in 2010 to 2015. So I'm the first male Labour Member of Parliament for my constituency since the 1970s. And rest assured, I have big boots to fill. May I now enlighten the House about my background? Surprisingly, I am the first Brickell in this place, and I am proud to be both Bolton-born and bred. My parents served our country for many years. My father as a soldier in the Royal Artillery, stationed in Germany, Northern Ireland, Canada and Cyprus, before going on to work as a paramedic in Bolton and then as a carer on the minimum wage. My mother working in the Women's Health Department at the Royal Bolton Hospital for more than 30 years. Indeed, my first job was working at Bolton Hospital before going on to spend more than a decade tackling serious financial crime, bribery, corruption, money laundering and the facilitation of tax evasion. And let us not forget that 4 out of 10 victims of crime are victims of fraud, often online. And indeed, the importance of public service was instilled in me from a young age by my parents, which is why I found myself wanting to stand to be in this place. I would like to pay tribute to my family and to my wife for their tireless support in my campaign to become the Member of Parliament and my ongoing work on behalf of my constituents. Bolton West is a misleading name for a constituency that is made up of towns with distinct local identities. The former mining town of West Horton, the historic locomotive town of Horwich, Blackrod and the western fringes of Bolton. Straddling the M61 motorway between Rivington Pike and Lee, the towns of Bolton West have a rich history. Indeed, last week marked the 126th anniversary of the Winter Hill mass trespass, when working people walked up together from Bolton to the West Pennine Moors in search of open countryside, fresh air and the right to roam. To this day, there remains work to be done to open up our countryside for all to enjoy in a responsible manner, and I will be working through this Parliament to secure that goal. I know also that Mr. Speaker and I have a shared interest in following the ups and downs of Bolton Wanderers Football Club, who play their matches at the Tough Sheet Community Stadium and who also provide vital support in the community for my constituents. And Horwich has a long history with manufacturing and more recently the services economy, centred around the Middlebrook retail and business parks. Indeed, it's home to Scan Computers, a pioneering firm which remains family owned to this day and which continues to invest in local talent across the borough. Elsewhere, MBDA, one of the UK's largest defence firms, manufactures at the Logistics North site in my constituency. Cohen's Chemists, which provides invaluable GP and pharmacy services, is headquartered in Lostock. And finally, plastic recycling firm Tough Sheet, which focuses importantly on repurposing waste products for use in the building industry. There are fantastic organisations and charities working day in, day out to support my constituents. Whether it is Bolton Mountain Rescue Team, based out of Ladybridge Hall, which is made up of tireless volunteers who are called out every week to save lives, or pioneering charities such as The Hub in West Horton or Blackrod Sports and Community Centre, both of which go above and beyond to ensure local people have opportunities to thrive. Turning back to politics, the recent general election campaign spoke to many of my constituents' concerns. The state of the local NHS and concerns around reinforced concrete found in our local hospital and schools. The 8 AM scramble to obtain a GP's appointment every morning. Spiralling housing costs and the need for better, well-paid jobs in the local area. And better integrated transport, which is both reliable and affordable. Plus effective policing, which prevents individuals falling into a life of crime, tackles repeat offending, and ensures local people feel safe in their own neighbourhoods. I will work as hard as I can to secure the improvement in public services my constituents urgently deserve. But I also want to draw attention to a key area of focus for me during my time here: standards in public life. We must always strive to be better if we are to retain the trust of the public. We all know that politics has the potential to change lives immeasurably for the better. Yet frankly, all too often the public feel let down, and there's a perception that sometimes vested interests subsume those of constituents in need of support. But it doesn't have to be like this, which is why I remain proud to see the Prime Minister stress the importance of public service. And as we look ahead to the remainder of this Parliament, let us never forget why we are here and who we serve. Let us embrace a politics of unity which recognises that by working together across party divides, we can achieve lasting progress for our constituents. And let us turn our backs on the dog whistle politics which sows division. The truth is that politics is far more difficult, more nuanced, yet also more fractious than many of us might like to admit. I would like to end by drawing an analogy between this place and my favourite pastime. In my spare time, I'm an avid whitewater kayaker, navigating our rivers from source to sea. It's a sport which has taken me to far-flung destinations: the Nepalese Himalaya, the White Nile in Uganda as it flows north out of Lake Victoria, the upper reaches of the Alps. Whitewater kayaking is an assumed risk sport. It is a team endeavour. There are many obstacles to navigate on the way downstream. Blind corners which may belie a tree blocking the entire river. vicious recirculating features which can trap a kayaker whole, and huge hidden waterfalls which can appear all of a sudden. That's before you get to the issue of effluent being discharged into our waterways, which has already been mentioned. The parallels with politics are striking, though, even for those uninitiated in the dark arts of navigating white water. Growing up, I had a poster on my wall quoting Chinese philosopher Confucius, which read, "One's greatest glory is not in never falling, but in rising every time one falls." An apt quote for politics, and one we would all do well to bear in mind over the coming weeks and months. Together, we have the power to make a lasting impact which will benefit our constituents. That is the privilege of being elected to this place, and one which I intend to deliver on during the coming years on behalf of the people of Bolton West.
Yeah. Maiden speech, David Reid.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, for calling me to speak. May I first congratulate all of the honourable members for delivering their maiden speeches. They've all spoken with wit, passion and enthusiasm about their constituencies, and I have no doubt that they will be strong representatives for their constituents. Madam Deputy Speaker, it is a real privilege to have the opportunity to deliver my maiden speech during the Sir David Amess General Debate. Sir David was a stalwart member of this House and was barbarically murdered in the line of parliamentary duty. As I stand here today in this most historic of chambers, I look over to Sir David's memorial plaque on the back wall of the government benches. And as I start life as a Member of Parliament, I hope that I can be a strong voice and a man of action for my constituents, as Sir David was for his. I want to start with a heartfelt thank you to the people of Exmouth and Exeter East, for they are the reason why I am here. They have put their trust in me to represent them as their first Member of Parliament for our new constituency. A responsibility that will always weigh heavily on my shoulders. And a thank you to my family and campaign team, who have been bastions of love and support through the long journey to this place. And, for the record, I want it to be known that getting married during the early stages of a general election campaign makes for an interesting start. Thank you to my wife for being a constant voice of reason and my rock throughout. Although Exmouth and Exeter East is a new constituency, it was created by amalgamating areas from 3 previous constituencies, of which East Devon was by far the largest contributor. Therefore, referring to, as is custom in a maiden speech, to all of my predecessors, may mark me in the Speaker's office as someone who does not abide by time limits. I say this because all 3 of my predecessors have made significant contributions to local and national life. Simon Jupp, the former member for East Devon, worked hard for his constituents and campaigned relentlessly as the chair of the Great South West All-Party Parliamentary Group. He helped secure investment into the region and always championed our part of the world. I consider Simon to be a friend, and his contribution to this House will be missed, as will his encyclopedic knowledge of local Devon ciders. Exmouth and Exeter East also incorporates 1 ward each from the Exeter and Central Devon constituencies. The new member for Exeter will no doubt give the Right Honourable Sir Ben Bradshaw the respect he deserves in his maiden speech. However, I would like to pay my own tribute to Sir Ben, and I know that his judgment and leadership will be missed by the party opposite. Lastly, I've been blessed to inherit the beautiful Ex-Valley from the Right Honourable Mel Stride, who continues to serve and lead in this House. His loss is my gain, but I will ensure to diligently represent the good people of the Ex-Valley as he has for the last 14 years. Madam Deputy Speaker, for those that have not had the good fortune to visit Exmouth and Exeter East, please allow me to indulge in a cook's tour of my new constituency, and to give members a flavour of the geography, the history, settlements, people and organisations that make my part of the world so irresistibly enchanting. Starting at the mouth of the River Exe, going out to the heathlands of Woodbury Common and finishing in the countryside above the city of Exeter, Exmouth and Exeter East has it all. Beautiful beaches, serene, open and arable landscapes, the eastern part of a thriving city, vibrant towns and picturesque villages. Many parts of my new constituency have been inhabited for several millennia, with areas such as Topsham being settled in by the Celts, turned into a port by the Romans and expanded by the Saxons. Possibly our most famous resident has been Sir Walter Raleigh, who was an Elizabethan statesman, soldier, writer and explorer. Although he achieved much in his life, I will do my best not to meet the same fate that he did, which was being tried for treason and meeting his end just outside of this chamber in the old palace yard. We have some fantastic organisations across Exmouth and Exeter East, such as the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, who work tirelessly to keep locals and tourists safe in the waters around the constituency. We have global experts working to advance the frontiers of knowledge about weather and climate at the Met Office's headquarters. We have Clinton Devon Estates, who are ably responsible for the stewardship of much of the land in the southern area of the constituency. And as an example, the Clinton Devon Estates team working with the Environment Agency recently demonstrated to the world how to proactively regenerate land by completing the Lower Otter Restoration Project. As to be expected, we are fortunate to have some of the best farming produce anywhere in the country. And for those looking to visit, I can highly recommend stopping in for a pasty at Darts Farm or Greendale Farm Shop. However, Madam Deputy Speaker, the organisation that has the most special place in my heart is the Commando Training Centre, Royal Marines. For decades, the training camp in Lympstone and the area of Woodford Common has been the proving ground for all wannabe Royal Marines and for those across our armed forces who aspire to become commandos. Having myself endured Royal Marine Commando training over 16 years ago, I am happy to announce that I have learned once again to enjoy spending time on Woodbury Common without fear of being cold, wet, hungry and covered in gorse thistles. The Royal Marines is a proud organisation in its 360th year in service to our country. Sadly, though, it has become increasingly rare for a former Royal Marine to enter this House as a member. However, Royal Marines must share the same tendencies that buses are afflicted by. That is, none turn up for eons and then 4 turn up at the same time. Although the other 3 former Royal Marines, the gallant member for Plymouth Moorview, for Halesone and Birmingham Sellyoke, opted to join the party opposites, I know that the kinship that binds Royal Marines together through shared adversity will benefit this House and hopefully provide combative but constructive debate.
Yeah.
Whilst Exmouth and Exeter East has much to be celebrated, it also has its fair share of issues. From an aged and degraded sewage network to antisocial behaviour, there are many issues that my constituents have placed trust in me to help improve. For too long, we've built new houses in the area without delivering appropriate and corresponding infrastructure. I fear the new government's top-down housing targets will further compound this issue, and I will do all that I can to ensure that the right mix of houses are built in the right places, with the right infrastructure, with public consultation. I'm also deeply concerned that within one generation, large parts of Exmouth and Exeter East will be tarmacked over. Of course we need new homes for the next generation, so that they can live near their friends, family and work. But we must have a tempered approach and ensure that we do not overdevelop and destroy our countryside and the culture of our historic towns and villages. There are also areas that I will work hard to improve across Exmouth and Exeter East, such as social care provision, post-16 education schemes, job opportunities, transport links and support for our farmers and those in rural affairs. It is also worth voicing that this new Parliament brings the winds of political change to Devon and the wider southwest of England. As a new MP, I am open and willing to work with fellow southwest MPs, regardless of political affinity, to ensure that we drive as much investment and opportunity to our parts of the world in a joined-up way. Madam Deputy Speaker, in an ever-increasingly connected world, I believe that our MPs must have a firm understanding of the national and international issues that affect us, and most importantly, how these issues affect our constituencies. For much of my adult life, I have fought hard in several organisations to keep our United Kingdom safe and prosperous, both in the physical and digital environment. We are on the precipice of a new industrial revolution, and frontier technologies such as artificial intelligence, supercomputing and nanobiotechnology will radically change our world and the relationship we have with it. It's imperative that the new government understands these issues and works across the public and private sector to ensure that our United Kingdom remains a technological global leader. There is also no getting away from the fact that the international system is becoming more volatile. It's deeply sad that conversations about international conflict are no longer hypothetical. War has broken out across multiple global regions, and we must act without delay to increase defence spending to meet the threats that are clearly present. Anthropogenic climate change has long ceased to be purely an academic debate. It's visible and it's happening now. We must continue to work closely with international partners to reduce our overall global carbon emissions. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, it's beyond a faux pas to speak in communist tones from this side of the House, as I could risk making the same treasonous mistake that Sir Walter Raleigh did. But there is modern resonance in Lennon's purported quotes. There are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. In isolation, any of the points that I have raised have the ability to cause mass societal and environmental change. Where decades happening in weeks become the new normal, we must keep pace to ensure the United Kingdom remains strong, allied, and ahead of the pack in an ever-changing world. My final message is to the people of Exmouth and Exeter East, who sent me to this House. I promise that I will always fight for us and to represent us to the best of my ability, whilst I have the privilege of serving as their Member of Parliament.
Speech, Jonathan Davies.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I congratulate the Honourable Member for Exmouth and Exeter East for his maiden speech. It was a joy to hear a little of his constituency. I want to begin by thanking my predecessor as Member of Parliament for Mid-Derbyshire, Pauline Latham, for all she did to serve its residents. Pauline represented the constituency from its creation in 2010 until she stood down at the end of the last Parliament. Prior to 2010, the communities that make up the constituency were parts of other constituencies, served by many illustrious former members, perhaps most notably including George Brown. Pauline championed many important causes in this place, including international development. She also led the charge to increase the marriage age from 16 to 18, a lasting change which reduces the risk of young people being subjected to coercion or abuse. I send Pauline my every best wish for her next chapter, and I look forward to working with her on areas of shared concern. A very small part, albeit very important part, of my constituency was also served by the former member for Derbyshire Dales, Sarah Dines, and I also thank her for her service, and I'm sure my colleague, the new member for Derbyshire Dales, will give a more extensive tribute to her in his maiden speech. One of the most exciting priorities of this new mission-led government is its commitment to harnessing the power of nature to deliver clean power and, in turn, deliver energy security, new jobs and cheaper bills. But there is a history stretching back over 250 years of using nature to power the economy in the Derwent Valley, which runs through mid-Derbyshire. The world's first water-powered mills were built on its riverbanks to spin cotton, making the valley the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution. Among its early pioneers were Jedediah Strutt, a hosier and cotton spinner from Belper. Through an entrepreneurial approach, Strutt progressed from humble beginnings to become one of the leading industrialists of his age. Along with Sir Richard Arkwright and Samuel Need, he was a father of the modern factory system which was adopted around the world. Although the Derwent Valley no longer hums to the clatter of looms or the rhythm of the people who operated them, it continues to harness nature to sustainably power homes and businesses through the hydroelectric schemes it supports today. However, despite being the East Midlands' only UNESCO World Heritage Site and home to some of the country's most beautiful landscapes and extensive biodiversity, some of the valley's iconic industrial buildings face an uncertain future due to their poor state of repair and lack of occupation. We must save these buildings. They have incredible potential, including to support local economies, increase job opportunities, and alleviate the housing crisis. They are also vital to telling Derbyshire's story and the story of our country. Celebrating and preserving the past is not frivolous or sentimental nostalgia. It is vital to our sense of place, our perception of who we are today and what we share with others, but also what makes us distinctive. Knowing where we have come from also shapes where we may venture next. This is true of buildings, countryside and historic sites as it is of our politics. It is also true of our arts and culture. The creative industries are among Britain's most important exports. They're a huge part of our economy and boost our standing around the world. They're also a vital catalyst to express and explore ideas and to bring communities together. There's something common to every culture since primordial times. Music, the visual arts, dance and drama provide an opportunity to walk in somebody else's shoes. They build a more inquiring society, help us understand who we are and what it might be like to have somebody else's experience. They're also a vital educational tool, but in far too many cases not a staple in schools today, or something people have the opportunity to adequately engage with throughout their lives. I look forward to making the case for why this is an underused opportunity for our country throughout my time in this place. So as we face the huge challenges ahead and return the country to economic stability and renewal, opportunity must be our watchword. Opportunity to help people get ahead in life through good jobs, for example, in the small and medium-sized businesses that proliferate my constituency, or at places like Smart Park in Spondon, where food production is being reimagined. Opportunity to benefit from exceptional education and training, like what is being offered at Rolls-Royce, also in my constituency, or at the University of Derby, which is part of Mid-Derbyshire too. Opportunity to enjoy good health and community safety through renewed public services, an opportunity to live in a greener world through the new government's commitment to the environment and to tackling climate change. Being given the opportunity to serve the people of Mid-Derbyshire is the privilege of my life, and I thank everyone who supported me along the way. The voters of Mid-Derbyshire, whether they voted for me or not, I am here to serve them. I also thank my many friends and family who've been a great source of strength along that journey. I'm determined to do the people of Mid-Derbyshire proud and to support the new government to deliver the change my constituents tell me they need and they rightly deserve. Thank you very much.
Sarah Green. Deputy Speaker, it's a real privilege to contribute to this first Sir David Amess adjournment debate. I didn't have the privilege of knowing him, but may I acknowledge and pay tribute to his colleagues for keeping his memory very much alive. We've had some brilliant maiden speeches so far this afternoon, and I know that there's more to come, but I congratulate the member for Mid-Derbyshire on his confidence speech, as I do to the honourable member, my honourable friend for Henley and Thame, and welcome him to the Liberal Democrat benches, as did the member for Exmouth and Exeter East deliver a confident and assured speech, as did the member for Bolton West. I wanted to acknowledge the member for Bexleyheath and Crayford for his very moving and raw contribution, as was the member for Reading West and Mid-Berkshire. She gave a very personal speech. And may I wish the member for Southampton Test an early happy birthday. Her pride in her city shines through, as does the pride of the member for Doncaster Central. Baroness Winterton was actually in the chair when I gave my maiden speech, and I echo her tribute to her. Madam Deputy Speaker, over the summer recess, I spent a lot of time in some of the smaller communities in my constituency, including Knotty Green, Winchmore Hill, Cheneys, Coles Hill, Sea Green and Jordans. There were some common themes that I would like to raise before this House adjourns. As you might imagine, some of the issues were particularly local to their area. In Coles Hill, for example, there is a real frustration at the continuing lack of broadband in the village. And in Coles Hill and Winchmore Hill, I was told about the lack of reliable bus services. Indeed, recent bus timetable changes made it harder for pupils to get to school, back to school this term. A solution was found for the boys attending one of the local boys' schools. The same cannot be said for girls trying to get to one of the local girls' schools. At this moment in time, pupils attending that local girls' school from the villages affected by this timetable change no longer have a viable way of getting there on public transport. And I'm mystified as to why boys and girls have been treated differently by the council on this particular issue. It won't surprise the House that all of the villages I went to wanted to share their horror at the state of our rivers. Many volunteer on the River Chess and the River Misbourne, rare chalk streams, and can see the devastating impact that both pollution and sewage is having. and a number of younger constituents came to share their concern for the environment, for saving the planet and making sure we all do our bit in making that happen. I have to pay particular tribute to one young constituent called Stella Jackson for presenting her petition to me. She deserves particular praise for the effort she went to gathering signatures for the petition she ran in her village, encouraging all of us to reduce, refuse, recycle and reuse. And while I'm talking about our young people, I have to say that I was encouraged to see the Westminster Hall debate on SEND services last week so well attended. Indeed, I was unable to voice the experiences of my own constituents because Westminster Hall was so full. There is a crisis in SEND provision. In our local area, Buckinghamshire Council has stated that demand for SEND services has increased by 50% in the last 3 years alone, and that this is unsustainable. The heartbreaking conversations I've had with families this summer support this assessment. It's also hard to hear the stories of people of all ages waiting for healthcare appointments and treatments. We know the NHS is under great pressure. We know that healthcare workers are working tirelessly in difficult circumstances. I do hope we look back on the Darcy report today as the point when the NHS started to turn a corner. I want to finish by mentioning the pensioners from my constituency who came to see me this summer, worried about the cuts to the winter fuel allowance. In every village I visited, this came up. Since the summer recess, almost 100 other constituents have written to me with similar concerns. This government cannot be held accountable for the mess they inherited, but stripping support from the poorest pensioners just when energy bills are set to rise again cannot be the answer. One constituent with Parkinson's told me that cutting back on their heating will almost certainly exacerbate their symptoms. Taking away this vital support is quite simply the wrong thing to do. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Maiden speech, Dave Robertson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank honourable members who've made their first speeches today for setting the bar just so high. I hope I can live up to the standard that they've set. I'm sent to this place by the constituents of Lichfield, a constituency which of course includes not only the city itself, but also the town of Burntwood and around 40 villages and hamlets in the great county of Staffordshire. I'm proud to serve the area which has been my home since before I knew to call anywhere home, and where I hope it will be for many, many more years to come. My predecessor in this House was Sir Michael Fabricant, knighted in 2023 for political and public service after more than 30 years representing first the constituency of Mid Staffordshire and then Lichfield in this House. 32 years in total Sir Michael served, and I think that would be a number which we would all aspire to. Should I be fortunate enough to be here in 30 years' time, Madam Deputy Speaker, I can only hope to have such a head of hair. It is, however, to longevity that I wish to turn now, Madam Deputy Speaker, and although I have received advice from some colleagues not to mention the Doomsday Book, I can neatly sidestep that, as the recorded history of my constituency dates back some 1,000 years before William the Conqueror to the Roman invasion and the establishment of Litositum, a Roman fort and later settlement near the crossroads of Watling Street and Ricknell Street, which is in my constituency. The crossing of those two roads remained an important place throughout the Roman and Saxon periods, and in the 7th century, Chad of Mercia established a cathedral and diocese in Lichfield, which still exists today. And in just over a week's time, I will be proud to be in attendance at the installation of, I think, the 58th Dean of Lichfield Cathedral. The Right Reverend Jan McFarlane will be the first woman to hold that post and will not only smash a glass ceiling, but will be an excellent advocate for the cathedral and the church in the local community and beyond. The 7th century is also noteworthy for the burying of the Staffordshire hoard, which was uncovered in Hammerwich in my constituency in 2009 near that same crossroads of Watling Street and Ricknell Street. The largest collection of Anglo-Saxon gold ever found, the hoard is already and will continue to have a significant impact on our understanding of the peoples of these isles before there was an England, a Scotland, a Wales or a Northern Ireland. Moving on from the 7th century, over the coming years, the city would continue to flourish and establish itself as a religious and ecumenical centre, although much of the area surrounding it maintained its rural and agrarian aspect for many centuries to come. In this time, the area did produce innumerable great lives, and while they are far too numerous to mention all of them here, I should note Gregory King, the world's first economic statistician, Elias Ashmole, whose collections founded the Ashmole Museum, the first of its type in the UK, David Garrick, the noted theatre innovator and manager, the physician Erasmus Darwin, a founding member of the Lunar Society, who had a rather famous grandson, the poet Anna Seward, Thomas Gisborne of Yoxall Lodge, who was an abolitionist and a close associate of William Wilberforce, the painter John Lewis Pettit, who's having a wonderful renaissance in the understanding of his work, Frederick Oakley, who translated the words to "O come all ye faithful," right there in Lichfield Cathedral, and of course Samuel Johnson, a man of letters and the author of the first dictionary of the English language. Carrying on to his heir, Samuel Barber, a freed slave who would go on to run a school in Burntwood, decades before Tom Jenkins would begin teaching in Teviot Head in Scotland, and who would also serve as a dozener in local government in Lichfield and become almost certainly the first black man to serve in local government in the UK. Before I move on from some famous people from around the area, I should mention a local success story in Sophie Catewell. Lichfield's Golden Girl brought home not just a gold medal from Paris recently, but also a world record as part of Team GB's fantastic games. In doing so, she ended my reign as the most successful former pupil of my old school, Netherstowe in Lichfield. And although I'd hoped to hold that title a little longer than 32 days, I am happy to be disappointed on that point. If I return to my historical tour of Lichfield and its surrounding area, we reach the early and mid-19th century, when the town of Burntwood, a conurbation of mining villages that grew up some 4 miles from Lichfield, and has a similarly proud history. Its most notable resident was the fundraiser and campaigner Stephen Sutton, who raised millions for the Teenage Cancer Trust, despite his diagnosis and loss far too soon at the age of just 19. Made an MBE for his fundraising, it is more than fitting that Burntwood Town Council remembers him through a student award named in his honour. Not to be outshone by the cathedral down the road, Burntwood also took its place in ecclesiastical history when, in 1883, St Anne's Church in Chasetown became the first in the country to have electric lighting. Today still, the people of Burntwood maintain a close-knit community typical of former mining areas, and it's really shown by the great examples of Spark Cafe and Burntwood Be a Friend, who've done so much to step in to replace services cut during 14 long years of Conservative government. Although if we are discussing Burntwood, we really can't forget the giant-killing exploits of Chasetown FC in the FA Cup of 2007 and 2008, and at some point I will forgive the members for Cardiff. Burntwood, however, is not the only part of my constituency that has a mining history. The village of Hansacre also more than played its part in powering the industry of the 19th and 20th centuries. And it's also the village where my old man taught his first lessons as a probationary teacher in the 1970s. The suggestion that his Geordie accent was in part responsible for his hiring in a school built to teach the children of new arrivals from the northeast remain suspected, if unconfirmed. But mining was not the only industry that found its way to my part of Staffordshire. Many of us will also recognise the name Armitage Shanks, but few will know its links to the village of Armitage, just a short trip up Rugeley Road from Hansacre. And as the new government focuses its legislative agenda on growth, I would remind colleagues that while many of us may have already spent a penny with Armitage Shanks, you are all welcome to visit and spend many more in the coming years. All of this industry, of course, meant that the canals came to my constituency. The Coventry and Trent and Mersey canals are still navigable today, and the work of Lichfield and Hatherton Canal Restoration Trust should be commended as it aims to restore this link as a green and blue way in the coming years. Although, as I now touch back on transport, I'd like to complete the circle and return to that crossroads which made Totterton. Watling Street, or the A5 as it's now known, and Ricknell Street, the A38, are major transport arteries that link my constituency both together and easily to the rest of the country. The A38 particularly has helped establish a logistics centre in a village of Fradley on the site of former RAF Lichfield. Fans of BBC's Bargain Hunt will know Fradley well, given the regular appearances of Richard Winterton and Winterton's auctioneers on that show. I do hope that I can get quite as much airtime as they do. Slightly further up the A38, you will find the National Memorial Arboretum near Albury was. A wonderful venue as the site of national remembrance. I would advise every single person to make a visit there to remember. Not just in November, but on any day. I'm sure that in the coming months, the Secretary of State for Transport will grow tired of my lobbying about the need for a railway station to serve that amazing location. On a very dissimilar note, the first travel lodge in the UK was opened up slightly up the road some 39 years ago, near to the village of Barton under Newood. Although that village should be much better remembered as the home of the Holland Tug of War team. Founded in 1970, the team has represented England at numerous international tournaments and even brought home a silver medal from the 2010 World Open Championships. It is this constituency that I return during this recess, Madam Deputy Speaker. I look forward to speaking to them about transport, about access to healthcare, about education healthcare plans and many other issues that are on the lips of my constituents. I look forward to bringing those stories back to this place so that I can continue to advocate on their behalf. Thank you.
Yeah. Maiden speech, Edward Mierlo.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm extremely honoured to be giving my maiden speech in the debate named after the late great Sir David Amess. I'm grateful for this opportunity. I'd like to thank all of the people who have given their maiden speeches today. I've enjoyed a lot of them. It's been wonderful to learn about all of the many famous former residents of Lichfield, and I wish the honourable gentleman the best of luck in adding his name to that pantheon. Special mention also to the honourable member Southampton Test for providing the answer to the pub quiz question, what links Craig David and fish finger sandwiches? So we all know better now. Madam Deputy Speaker, I am the first non-Conservative MP for West Dorset in its 139-year history, something I am extremely proud of. That notwithstanding, I would like to start by paying tribute to my Conservative predecessor. Chris Loder's family has farmed West Dorset for over 100 years, and he should be deservedly proud to have served as its MP. We are both successors to Sir Oliver Letwin, an MP who was so well respected by the residents of West Dorset that they would stop me at every opportunity to tell me what a fantastic constituency MP he was, and I can only hope to leave this house as fondly remembered as he is in the area. While each of us has been proud to be the member for West Dorset, we are not West Dorset's proudest member. That honour goes to the Cerne Abbas Giant, a 55-metre high chalk fertility symbol, whose presence stands proud over the Cerne Valley for all to see. West Dorset is the best constituency in the country, Madam Deputy Speaker. I know this for a fact because the towns of Bridport, Dorchester, Lyme Regis and Sherborne have, over the last few years, at various times been described as the best towns in Britain by no lesser authority than the Dorset Echo, a newspaper that shares my unrivalled objectivity when it comes to the virtues of West Dorset. West Dorset is home to the world-famous Jurassic Coast, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, where Mary Anning helped revolutionise our understanding of prehistoric life and who was long overlooked by historians, but whose contribution is now recognised with a beautiful statue in her hometown of Lyme Regis. At the other end of the Chesil Beach is the Fleet Lagoon, the UK's largest saltwater lagoon, on which sits the Abbotsbury Swanery, home to over 600 swans and a fantastic day out, especially if you love swans. As well as the swans, you can also see, rather incongruously, a prototype of Barnes Wallis's bouncing bomb. Quite what the swans of Abbotsbury thought about their home being used as a replica for the Ruhr Dams is still unknown. Sadly, our beaches and rivers also saw over 45,000 hours of sewage released into them last year. The River Lim, which exits at Lyme Regis, was declared ecologically dead due to the levels of pollution in it. It is shameful that before I and my family go swimming at our nearby beach of West Bay, we must log on to the Surfers Against Sewage app to check if it is safe to swim. I committed during the campaign to use my seat in this House to pressure the government to take serious action on the issue of sewage, and I promise to do so. West Dorset is Hardy country. Thomas Hardy is renowned the world over for his poetry and novels such as Far From the Madding Crowd and Tess of the D'Urbervilles. His works famously deal with themes of melancholy, of sadness, of moral conflict, Emotions, I'm sure, familiar to those members voting in the Tory leadership contest. In his lifetime, he was also highly critical of the declining status afforded to rural Britain. For even more than its beautiful towns and coastline, West Dorset is a constituency defined by its countryside, a landscape that is managed and maintained by our farmers and food producers, and who are the beating heart of our rural economy. We desperately need, as a nation, a food and farming strategy that will deliver sustainable living for our farmers. Yeah. Far from being cut, the farming budget needs to be significantly increased if conversations about food security are ever to be anything other than fine words. As an environmentalist, I am delighted to see that we now have a government who seem to understand the importance of tackling the climate crisis and the vital part that renewable energy will play in achieving net zero. Having spent a large part of my career in renewable energy, I will be urging the government to go further and faster if we are to avoid the worst ravages of a climate emergency which is already unfolding. Yeah. The Liberal Democrats will continue to champion the need for action in this House. On the subject of my party, I would like to pay tribute to our party leader. I and many of my colleagues here owe our places in no small part to the fantastic, if unorthodox, campaign that our leader ran. I must also pay reference to another leader of the Liberal Democrats. My political journey began in 2015 with Nick Clegg's resignation speech. He said, and I summarise here, that in the face of the politics of identity, of nationalism, and of us versus them, it has never been more important to keep the flame of liberalism alive. It is true then, and it is true now. I knew then that it was not enough to stand on the sidelines and watch the country that I love so much be eaten by the self-interest of those who seek power only for power's sake or for self-enrichment. Sadly, over the summer, we saw that there were those who would seek to use the misery of people who have come here seeking refuge to further their own aims. I mention this because it will come as no surprise that the Mierlos are not originally from this island. The Mierlos of Italy became the Mierlos of Spain, with apologies to both countries for my pronunciation, before coming to Britain at the beginning of the 20th century. One of my forebears died fighting in World War I for the country that adopted him and is buried in a Commonwealth war grave cemetery in northern France. My own father served in the Royal Navy. But even more than Mierlos, my family are Mierzejskis. My maternal grandfather came here from Poland at the end of the Second World War, fleeing another type of political tyranny. He arrived as a child, speaking no English. He became an engineer and set up a building company. His children became nurses, teachers, artists and architects. His grandchildren are doctors, civil servants, lecturers, environmentalists, and one of them stands here before you today as a Member of Parliament. In my experience, immigrants do not forget the debt they owe the country that offered them a future. Yeah. We must not let hate win. We must champion hope. And it is why it is more important than ever to fly the flag for liberalism, liberal values, and a rules-based international order. I would also like to mention my amazing wife. She is far, far cleverer than me and would make a far better politician, and without whom I certainly would not be here today. Not just because of the love and support she has shown me, but also because it was her suggestion in the first place that I run, something I find myself reminding her of with increasing frequency. Finally, I would like to thank the voters of West Dorset for putting their faith in me. It is a huge honour to represent them, and I look forward to doing everything I can to deliver a better deal for West Dorset. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. I think it would be a huge shame in the Sir David Amess Adjournment Debate to put a time limit on. So members can see how, and you can all sit down for just a moment, members can see how many are still standing, and I know there are many maiden speeches who would really like to be completed before we disappear on recess again. So perhaps members could think about restricting themselves to 7 or 8 minutes so that I can get everybody in this afternoon. Maiden speech, Conor Rand.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, for allowing me to make my maiden contribution in this debate. And I want to pay tribute to those members on both sides of the House who have made their maiden contributions, including the member for West Dorset, who gave us an illuminating insight into what we could hope to see in his constituency. And I also want to pay tribute to the moving contributions of, in regard to Sir David Amess from those who knew him. I'm extremely proud to be the first Labour Member of Parliament for Altrincham and Sale West. In no small part because of the brilliant team of local volunteers who worked on the campaign and the support of my wonderful friends and family. And I should also thank my constituency neighbour, the member for Stretford and Urmston, who was born in my constituency and was such a valuable friend to me during the campaign. And I want to also, at this early stage in my contribution, pay tribute to my predecessor, Lord Brady. Lord Brady represented the people of Altrincham and Sale West for 27 years, and I want to thank him for his service to his constituents and for his kind words to me following my election. I think one of my constituents summed it up best. Whilst out knocking on doors in Hale during the election campaign, a woman said of Lord Brady, and the whole House will be relieved to know I'm not going to attempt to impersonate the lady, I am just going to quote, "The thing about Graham is that whether you agreed or disagreed with him, and frankly I usually disagreed with him, he was always unfailingly affable, and I hope to one day be described by my constituents in a similar fashion, Madam Deputy Speaker." And of course, as a result of a rather interesting few years for the party opposite, he might well come to be remembered as one of the more consequential chairs of the 1922 committee. I'm sure the new chair, the member for Harrow East, is hoping for a slightly quieter few years. And judging by the friendly and collegiate way the party's leadership contest is shaping up, I have every confidence that that will be the case. But when I meet new members from all sides of this House and tell them I am fortunate enough to represent such a beautiful constituency as Altrincham and Sale West, in many cases I get a nagging sense from them, Madam Deputy Speaker, that my mere presence here, representing where I do, is symptomatic not just of the level of change at the last general election, but of a Labour Party that is able to appeal to every part of our country and every section of society. But Madam Deputy Speaker, the reality is that my constituency is extraordinarily diverse in almost every regard. In easy reach of the City of Manchester, it is a place of business, thriving SMEs and entrepreneurship, including the spectacular market in Altrincham, but where Wythenshawe and Trafford General Hospitals are also major employers. It is an area with tens of churches, 4 synagogues, and the Altrincham and Hale Muslim Association, where many from Hong Kong have chosen to start a new life away from tyranny and repression. And yes, it is a part of the world where many people are doing well for themselves and for their families, but where an estimated 3,000 children are growing up in poverty. What unites the constituency, Madam Deputy Speaker, and what makes it such an extraordinary place is that it has such a strong sense of community, participation, and everyone pitching in to play their part. I've seen it at Altrincham Football Club, a brilliant community club with amazing grassroots initiatives that in 2019 were the first team in England to wear a shirt inspired by the rainbow flag to show their support in the fight against homophobia. I've seen it from staff and volunteers at the Garrick Playhouse, working tirelessly to put on a comprehensive series of plays and productions. And I've seen it at Trafford South Food Bank, working across the constituency to provide for people in need, able to do what they do, thanks to the remarkably generous donations of local people. But Madam Deputy Speaker, all too often, organisations like this are having to go above and beyond in the most challenging of circumstances to stop people falling through the cracks, because we have failed as a country to provide people with the security they need in work, failed to provide the economic stability and certainty businesses need to invest, and failed to address the long-term challenges our country faces. That is why we were elected, to fix what has become broken and to offer hope and renewal. And that is why the people of Altrincham and Sale West sent me here, to cut waiting times across our National Health Service, including at Wythenshawe and Trafford General, to clean up our badly polluted rivers and streams, and to make sure that people can feel safe on our streets by tackling crime and antisocial behaviour. And having worked on a national campaign against the violence and abuse shop workers receive, I know how important it is that we clamp down on crime against public-facing workers, and I know that this government will act. And Madam Deputy Speaker, having changed our party so that we could be given the extraordinary opportunity we have to change our country, it is this sort of tangible change to the lives of the people in Altrincham and Sale West that we must achieve. I'm looking forward to working to deliver that change in the years to come, and showing how even in difficult times government can still be a force for good, because that is the very least that the people of Altrincham and Sale West and of our country expect and deserve.
Andrew Bowie.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's an absolute pleasure to rise to speak in this debate and to follow the member for Altrincham and Sale West with what was a fantastic maiden speech, and to indeed share in his kind words about his predecessor, who was indeed an incredibly affable man who served my party, this House, and indeed this country with diligence whilst he was a Member of Parliament, and I know will continue to do so now he is in the other place. It is also a pleasure to rise to speak in the debate named after, of course, Sir David Amess. My only sadness today is that with so many new members, they will not have the benefit of the wit or the wisdom that so many of us had when we first came into this place, in my case, in 2017, and others before me. I'd also like to welcome, in particular, the new member for Southampton Test. I got to know her predecessor, Alan Whitehead, incredibly well when he was my shadow and we were taking the energy bill through hours and hours and hours of committee time in the last Parliament. And whilst I completely agree, he was there was nothing he didn't know about the energy brief. He was a giant in that field, and she does indeed have shoes to fill. I can't quite agree with her when she makes a comparison with Taylor Swift. So whilst she has big shoes to fill and a big act to follow, I'm sure she will shake it off in time. Thank you. It's almost as if to make the point of my new colleague, the member for Eyemouth and Exeter East. There are indeed weeks in which decades happen. The last time I addressed this House from the backbenches was on the 11th of July 2022. I was making a contribution speaking against my own government's introduction of the Energy Profits Levy. By the time I had returned to address this House, I was on the front benches as a minister. We had 2 changes of Prime Minister, 1 new monarch, and I'd gained a daughter. Which just by way of saying to new members, things happen fast here. So be prepared for that. But yes, I was speaking on the introduction of the Energy Profits Levy back in 2022. And although my front bench position precludes me from speaking about that particular measure from the backbenches, I would like to take this opportunity to remind and beg that ministers who are in charge of the new taxation and licensing policy in the North Sea to remember there are people and communities who are very worried about their future in the oil and gas industry. And so when these changes are being made, please remember people's lives and livelihoods, and the livelihoods of communities around many parts of this country are indeed watching, waiting, and are worried. Madam Deputy Speaker, West Aberdeenshire and Kincardine is, I know you agree, the most beautiful constituency in the United Kingdom, despite the fact we've heard so many people saying the same about their own parts of the world this afternoon. People across the world saw it in its full glory, of course, 2 years ago, just this week, when, after the death of Her late Majesty the Queen at Balmoral in the constituency, my constituents and people across our region turned out in their thousands to line the roads along Royal Deeside. And I don't think anybody will forget the scenes of the horses lined up by the sides of the road, or the tractors paying tribute to one of their own as she left for the very last time. And people around the world saw on that day what Her late Majesty and indeed her son, His Majesty the King, continues to see: the majesty, magnificence and the unspoilt beauty of the northeast of Scotland. One of the reasons why there is such concern and worry over the plans for new energy infrastructure across the countryside in the constituency that I am proud to represent. Tourism, Madam Deputy Speaker, is so important to to my constituents and indeed the wider region of the north east of Scotland. But the hospitality sector and the hotel sector has struggled. Yes, visitor numbers are good, but the cost of doing business has increased markedly over the last few years. Energy prices, higher staff costs, a lack of workforce, all have contributed to a difficult and challenging environment in which some of Scotland's best hotels and restaurants are continuing to operate. We, when in government, took action to protect hospitality businesses. We extended the 75% business rates relief for firms in retail, hospitality and leisure sector in the autumn statement last year, which meant that £230 million extra would be sent to Scotland due to this area being devolved. However, the Scottish Government did not pass this on to the hospitality industry in Scotland. Hospitality venues in West Aberdeenshire and Kincardine, and indeed the rest of Scotland, suffered because of the mismanagement of the Scottish public finances and, sadly, the ignorance of how best to support that vital sector within the Scottish Government. And so I very much hope this situation changes and that any support that might be forthcoming for hospitality in the coming budget will be passed on in full to Scottish businesses that are affected. Hospitality brings me on to another sector of vital importance, not just to West Aberdeenshire and Kincardine, but, of course, to the United Kingdom. That is, of course, whisky. On my regular visits to local distilleries like Fetter Cairn and Royal Loch Nagara, I've experienced firsthand the real quality produced by these world-recognised brands with world-class taste. It isn't just important to my constituency, but to the United Kingdom economy as a whole. It is our biggest food and drink export, by a long way. 100 bottles of Scotch whisky are exported, on average, every second from the United Kingdom. A gross value add of 7.1 billion per annum, supporting directly alone 66,000 jobs. So today I'd like to take this opportunity to join with the Scotch Whisky Association in calling for this sector, iconic and economically so important, to be championed and listened to at the heart of government. Let's redouble efforts to reduce remaining tariffs worldwide. Let's protect it with fair advertising landscape, and let's see a duty freeze in the forthcoming budget so that this world-leading Scottish and British success story can grow still further. Madam Deputy Speaker, West Aberdeenshire and Kincardine, as well as being the most beautiful constituency, the energy powerhouse of the UK, the home of the finest whiskies, and also the breadbasket of the country, from Cambus and May cheese to the Aberdeenshire Highland beef farm near Banchory to potato and cereal farming, including malting barley across Lawrencekirk and the Mearns. And so many of my constituents are directly or indirectly employed in the agriculture sector, the rural lifeblood, which sustains not only our local economy, but also provides so much security in the national food supply chain, feeding our nation. This is something I know that people in my constituency are immensely proud of. But it is not without its challenges. The challenge to persevere with producing and delivering food for this country despite unpredictable weather, rising costs of energy and fertiliser. So, at this occasion, I'd like to call alongside the NFUS for annual ring-fence funding to support Scottish farmers as they continue to deliver for our nation. Madam Deputy Speaker, it is a great privilege, as I say, to rise to speak in this debate today. It is now sitting on the other side of the House. It is a sense of daily inspiration to see Sir David's coat of arms looking down us. I only know that he, like us, would be working as hard as possible to ensure that we return to the other side of the House at the earliest available opportunity in 4 or 5 years' time. Thank you very much.
Maiden speech, Noshaba Khan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I congratulate everybody in the House that has made their maiden speeches today. You've spoken so passionately about your constituencies that I wish to come and visit them all, although I would ask that the Honourable Member for Southampton Test, I'll only come if you promise to treat me to a fish finger sandwich. I'm also honoured to give my maiden speech today, and I do so in the mother of all parliaments with a great humility. I will never forget that the people of Gillingham and Rainham have sent me here, a Muslim woman, and it is only with their authority and trust that I speak. It is a privilege that I would never take lightly, which is why I would also like to begin by paying tribute to Sir David Amess, who embodied everything it means to be a public servant, and I've learnt a lot about him in this chamber today. Madam Deputy Speaker, I also want to take this opportunity to acknowledge my predecessor, Rayleigh, who served his constituents faithfully over many years. Rayleigh arrived in this country at 6 years of age, not speaking a word of English, but with the support of a community, our schools, our teachers, he was eventually called to the bar and then elected as an MP. He should be proud of his achievements in Parliament, and I wish him well with whatever the future holds for him. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, his story could only really happen in the UK, and I know the feeling. The feeling that I could not make sense anywhere else. I could visit Kenya, where my mother was born, or Pakistan, where my father comes from. But the moment I utter a single word or walk a few metres, anyone who would care to would know that I'm not from there. Because the only place I truly feel myself is my hometown. I'm a child of Gillingham and Rainham, no matter how many a small minority will insist that I am not. You could say, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm a Gillingham girl. I know I am. I'm sure I am. And now that I've said that, I can return to the Rainham end of the Priestfield Stadium with my head held high. Madam Deputy Speaker, it is that confidence that I want every child in my constituency to have. Because opportunity is no good to a generation that feels so beaten down they dare not look up. To have confidence that they can set a course for their life and have the means to get there, or at least know how to make it possible. But it has to come from somewhere. It has to start with someone. For me, it was my grandparents, the first generation of my family to emigrate to the UK. My grandfather worked on the railways and my grandmother was a fruit picker. They made Gillingham and Rainham their home and taught me that nothing is easy, that it has to be earned, and that when we work together as a family, as workers, as a collective, we achieve more. They were my first political role models. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is because of my parents that I'm standing here today. My father never stopped believing in me, and he didn't want me to be held back by the same things in life that had held him back. Before he sadly passed away in 2020, he made me promise to not stop until I made the change I wanted to see. I wish you were here to witness it today, but I know that with my mother's support, who is in the gallery, that I can do just that. Not by myself, but together, with all my colleagues, our movement, and the people of Gillingham and Rainham, who I make common cause with. And there is so much to build on. If you haven't already guessed, we are the home to the mighty Gillingham FC. Of course, League One will be very lucky to have us when we're good and ready. As well as Medway Maritime Hospital, a pillar of our community, staffed by dedicated professionals who do an outstanding job under increasingly difficult circumstances. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm not sure if your privileges extend to a Disney Plus subscription, but if they do, please do ensure you watch Shogun. It's based on Will Adams, who was born in Gillingham, the first Englishman to navigate to Japan in 1598, who later became a samurai. Of course, when we aren't exporting military heroes, we're making them instead. Gillingham and Rainham has a proud military and naval history, sharing a formal naval dockyard and the Royal Engineers with neighbouring constituencies. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, we do face our challenges. Speaking to residents over the years, a story of decline and disillusionment has become all too familiar. Years of neglect and a lack of hope. The worst of it is that it is not unknown. It is not new insight, it's been spoken of many times, in this house and the other place. It is said, it is forgotten, we move on. And over time, feeling hopeless is the only rational response the public have left. I hear it firsthand from countless residents who are worried about whether their children will have the same opportunities they had growing up, and whether our community will continue to thrive in years to come. These concerns are not unique to Gillingham and Rainham, but they are deeply felt by the people I represent. And it is my duty to ensure that their voice is heard in this House and that their needs are met by our government. So that not only can we rebuild trust in our politics, but that we can once again proudly say this country is a place where anyone, regardless of background, can succeed. And that is why I welcome the government's pledge to improve children's speaking skills as part of a helpful step to break down class barriers. It is those values that underpin my politics, and it is my experience that will drive my work as a Member of Parliament. Madam Deputy Speaker, having a place to call home should be a fundamental right, and my time working for over a decade in the housing industry, and most recently for homelessness charity St Mungo's, taught me that how you access housing impacts everything, from your physical and mental health to your life chances. That is why I will always champion my constituents' right to good quality, genuinely affordable homes. Work that was started in my constituency by the late Alderman Paul Harriott, who also recognised that housing is more than just having a roof over your head. I will also work tirelessly to improve our local healthcare services. The pressures on our NHS are immense, and it is vital that we secure the necessary resources and support to ensure that everyone has access to the best possible healthcare. Madam Deputy Speaker, the regeneration of our high streets is a matter of great concern to my constituents. So I will advocate for policies that support small businesses, encourage investment and help to restore the vitality of our town centres, just like the Love Gillingham initiative, which I proudly announced only last week. Finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to acknowledge the incredible sense of community that exists in my constituency. Whether it is neighbours looking out for one another, volunteers working to support the most vulnerable, or local groups coming together to tackle common challenges. It is clear that people care deeply about their community and each other. As their representative, I pledge to work with that same spirit of cooperation and compassion. I will listen to the people I serve and I will fight for their interests in this House. The challenges we face are significant, but I'm confident that together we can start to rebuild Gillingham and Rainham. Thank you.
Yeah. Maiden speech, Danny Chambers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. That was a very interesting maiden speech, and it's absolutely clear how passionate you are about your about the member. Sorry, I'm going to have to get this right, aren't I, Madam Deputy Speaker? The member for Gillingham spoke very passionately about her constituency, and it's clear how hard you're going to work for them. And it's an absolute honour to speak here in this tribute to David Amess. And the tributes we heard from him, from people who knew him, were very moving. And it's something we want to aspire to be MPs who are even half as good as he was for his constituency. So practising as a veterinary surgeon, it's been deeply rewarding. And even the 3 a.m. carvings, the visiting colics in the middle of the night, and euthanizing much-loved family pets. It's been the perfect job for me as someone who grew up on a farm and who really loved science at school. But I was very relieved when I got elected that my first job as an MP was actually still within my comfort zone, as I was asked to judge the dog show at Me on Stake Village Fair. We knock on a lot of doors, all of us do, and one of the most common questions I get asked is it true that vets can treat humans as well? And I always answer people, yes, vets, we can treat humans, but once we've taken your temperature, people tend not to ask a second time. But although being a vet is a very fulfilling career, it's also very stressful, and it may surprise this House to learn that vets actually have a suicide rate of around 4 times the national average. Now, I've long been determined to do something about this, so along with one of my good friends, Sarah Brown, we set up a support group for veterinary professionals, which now has over 19,000 members. Now, unfortunately, my friend Sarah lost her battle of depression, and so I took her place as a trustee of the charity VetLife, and we support the mental health of the UK veterinary profession. So not only does VetLife have a 24-hour helpline for people who are struggling, but we also refer immediately anyone who is at crisis point of their mental health. Because I'm sure the whole House will be aware at the moment, if you go to a GP in a crisis situation, you may have to wait months or even over a year to get the specialist health care that you need. And I'm sure we all agree that that is not good enough. Yeah. We also know that it is not only veterinary surgeons who are at high risk of mental health issues. And there are other groups who need proactive support for their mental health. We have military veterans, women in the 12 months after giving birth, farmers, the LGBT community, and people who are struggling with debt. We know that living in poverty makes people vulnerable to the desperate cycle of payday loan companies and credit card debt. And not only does that put strain on family relationships, but it saps the joy from life, and it also contributes towards our mental health crisis. And my experience is probably shared by everyone else in this house who knock on doors, is that one of the most common subjects that is brought up are parents who are really struggling to access the mental health care for their children and teenagers, whose education and their social development was hugely disrupted by the pandemic. And this is something that parents are worried sick about. So I'm very proud that the Lib Dems have for years said that mental health should be treated with the same level of importance as physical health. And we're really heartened that the government reaffirmed this in the King's speech recently. So the Winchester constituency, there's slight boundary changes, and so we incorporated some of the Meon Valley. And so my constituents were served by 2 MPs in the last Parliament, and I'd like to pay tribute to them. There's Steve Bryan, who is also chair of the Health and Social Care Committee, and Flick Drummond, and I want to thank them for all the hard work that they did over the years for the people in my constituency. So Winchester is once one of the ancient capitals of England. It's steeped in history. King Alfred the Great, he famously defended the city from Viking attacks in the 9th century, fortifying Winchester and leading a series of successful campaigns, and he eventually secured a decisive victory in the Battle of Edington in 878. And this victory marked the beginning of the unification of England under Alfred's rule. The city is also home to the magnificent Winchester Cathedral, which has stood as the symbol of the city's religious and cultural significance for over a millennium. And we have one of the oldest newspapers in the country, the Hampshire Chronicle, which is still very popular and very well read. Now, while we are proud of our rich history, we're also a forward-looking community, keenly aware of our role in the world and our responsibility to the future. To this end, we're striving to become an official city of sanctuary for refugees, having welcomed so many from Ukraine and other areas of the world that are troubled by conflict. And organisations such as the Winchester Action on Climate Crisis, WINAC, are working tirelessly to ensure that Winchester plays our part in combating the global climate change. The River Itchen flows right through the heart of our city, and the River Meon through the Meon Valley. I must apologise, I seem to have contracted kennel cough. These rare chalk streams, they support unique ecosystems so precious that the Itchen has been designated as a site of special scientific interest, and we hope the Meon will soon receive that same accreditation. Allowing sewage and other pollutants to be dumped in these rivers is nothing short of ecological vandalism. But climate change, pandemics, antimicrobial resistance, and how do we feed 8 billion people and give them energy sustainably? These are daunting challenges. Thank you, sir. We must face them, though. That is not because they're just, well, we have to face them. They are existential threats to our civilization, but also they are economic opportunities. The technology and the expertise required to address them are also opportunities for economic growth. The UK has the potential to be a world leader in this. No single country can address these issues alone. To find lasting solutions, we need a united effort from governments, research institutes, universities, scientists, engineers, businesses and tech startups worldwide. We've learned over the last few years that whether dealing with pandemics or climate change, the human and economic costs are enormous when our political leaders ignore scientists and ignore experts. My upbringing and my state school education gave me the opportunity to have an enjoyable and fulfilling career, but I'm also aware that I was privileged. I always had a roof over my head, I had a stable family life, I never went to school hungry, and my mother, who is here today, is a former teacher, and she used to read to us every night. I do vividly remember the day she quite angrily said, "I'm not reading Danny, Champion of the World to you one more time." But many children today are not so fortunate. The increasing number of children who are growing up in poverty lack the opportunities that I had. And although these are complex issues, we can begin addressing them by providing free school meals to all children who are hungry to ensure that every child can reach their full potential. Because certainly, had I gone to school hungry, it's very unlikely I'd be standing here today as a veterinary surgeon, and even less likely as a Member of Parliament. I will miss treating animals on a daily basis, and some of my colleagues have said to me, it is fantastic for animal welfare that you have been elected to Parliament, because it means you'll be spending less time in the veterinary clinic. But, and I think I'm going to have a bigger impact on animal welfare than I ever could in clinical practice. So my goals here include updating the outdated Veterinary Surgeons Act from 1966 to make it fit for the 21st century. And we need to address issues such as puppy smuggling, because not only are they an animal welfare issue, they are actually a human health risk, bringing the risk of importing rabies and Brucella canis and other diseases that affect the human population. I also want to support our British farmers in upholding our high animal welfare standards and make sure that they are not compromised in future trade deals. Because it's not only vets and farmers who are proud of our high animal welfare standards, it is also the British public, and we must not compromise those. I really want to thank my team of volunteers, many of who are here today, who have worked so hard not only during the general election campaign, but also in this transition from setting up a constituency office. And they have been fantastic while we are recruiting for permanent members of staff. They've done over 800 pieces of casework supporting our local community. I also want to thank my family and my partner, Emma, and I'd like to pay tribute to my father, who is no longer with us, but our family had the heartbreaking experience of caring for him as he declined due to dementia. And I know there's many people in Winchester and Hampshire and throughout the country who are experiencing the same situation with their loved ones. It is the honour of my life to serve as Winchester's MP. I will continue to stand up and fight for our local NHS services, our local hospital services, and I want to thank everyone who put their faith in me and my team. We will not let you down.
Speech, Tristan Osborne.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I congratulate the Honourable Member for Winchester for his excellent speech. I can see he has a bit of a frog in his throat, so and I hope he did it well and fantastic, and I was really interested to hear his views on Danny Champion in particular. I'm also reminded of how quintessentially British this is, to hear about fish finger sandwiches from Southampton, to hear about Armitage Shanks from Lichfield, and Devon pasties from the member from Exmouth. And it is simply a tribute to all of us that our diverse constituencies are a rich tapestry of difference and diversity. And it is in that tradition that I stand before you today. I believe that David Amess would be proud of this Parliament and proud of some of the speeches that have been given. And I want to pay tribute to the member for Rayleigh and Wickford, who spoke eloquently with fond anecdotes on the character, charm and wit of the former member. I can say that my speech is not written on toilet paper. However, I was possibly as equally surprised to be elected in this chamber as he was back in the 1980s. But it is a privilege, Madam Deputy Speaker, to be elected to represent the communities of Chatham, Aylesford, Snodland and the surrounding villages. We all in this chamber do this, not for awards or recognition, but simply because we all want to make our communities better, safer and fairer. So may I start by placing on record my thanks to the House staff for the welcome and support they've given all new members over the last few weeks, especially so many of us this time, the table office, the Speaker's office, the doorkeepers, security, and just as a teacher, former teacher, a special thanks to the education support assistants doing such outstanding work on tours. Yesterday, I had the great pleasure of meeting one Mr. O'Sullivan, who is shortly to depart our education centre here, who is going into teaching, and I wished him the best in that pursuit. Preparing for this speech has not been without trepidation, Madam Deputy Speaker. I have had a significant amount of advice from members, former members, siblings, partners, and former students alike. One piece of advice was to treat this speech like a wedding, treading carefully to keep both sides of the aisle happy, and always remember to speak highly of your elders. Until I was reminded that I am in my mid-40s, possibly one of those elders, given the age differential that has changed. In addition to that, one piece of advice from a former member was to always keep the whips happy. So, and with that note, he's smiling. On that note, second only to Bridgend, Chatham and Aylesford is amongst one of the most beautiful constituencies in the country. Created in 1997 from the previous Rochester and Chatham, Mid-Kent and Tunbridge and Malling seats, we have had a rich legacy of excellent and outspoken parliamentarians, including Lady Peggy Fenner, Andrew Rowe, Julian Critchley, Jonathan Shaw, and the remarkable Dame Tracy Crouch. And what can I say? Dame Tracy Crouch is a well-known individual for her warm personality, her diligence. She was engaging, and her constituents spoke well of her on the doorstep and in the 14 years that she represented the area. I'm also reliably informed, unlike myself, that she had a legendary involvement in the parliamentary football team, where I'm reliably informed again that her tackling skills were well known, and no one ever tried to perhaps take the ball from her when she was in full flight. But actually, on a serious note, she has done outstanding work on the Football Fan Review. She led on anti-gambling legislation when she was in the Department for Media, Culture and Sport, and has left a deeply inspiring legacy for young women in sport in particular that I think will be testament, and I salute her record and her fortitude. My constituents embody aspiration and determination, and although I was raised in the city of Medway, I have been actively involved in Chatham since 2001. It is a dynamic and diverse area with hard-working, direct and down-to-earth people. The constituency is truly beautiful, with a stunning panoramic views of Bluebell over the Weald of Kent that on a clear day you can see many other constituencies, including Tunbridge, Sevenoaks, Maidstone and Malling and Canterbury. And it entertains many walkers and hikers along the historic Pilgrim's Way. The seat also contains some of the earliest human settlement history, with the megalithic structures of Kit's Coty that hark back to Neolithic times, with the identification of many artefacts of historical significance. Though I will say to my honourable colleague on the side, there is no chalk statues with historic stature in my constituency, perhaps. But the most common part of my constituency that will be known to members is Chatham, which has a historic legacy known across the world. Its significance as a commissioned dockyard has been recognised globally for its long-standing naval tradition that dates back to Henry VIII and the Tudor period. And the area has retained this naval link up until the 1980s. The dockyard was closed, however, it still has a proud naval tradition. And I'm reliably informed that the Resolute desk in the Oval Office, in the heart of our Western democracy, came from the HMS Resolute, which was constructed and supported from Chatham. And many of our finest naval traditions have come from this location. Madam Deputy Speaker, Chatham and Aylesford does, however, face significant challenges. Many areas, particularly urban Chatham, experience poverty, with 17% of children living in poverty according to the House of Commons figures. We also have significant issues with crime, antisocial behaviour, and these have been exacerbated by cuts to neighbourhood policing and early intervention programmes. I am committed to working with all our communities to address these challenges going forward. And it is in that note that I want to pay particular tribute to many of those charities and organisations that serve my local community, including the Arches Project in Luton, the Dementia Awareness Group, Street Angels, the RBLI and our Poppy Appeal volunteers who every year go out to collect funds for veterans and our military community. I believe that community wealth building should be central to our approach to government, and by focusing on wealth creation, we can drive and support local businesses and revitalise our town centres. And I'm particularly keen to hear my colleague from Gillingham and Raynham has done excellent work in the neighbouring seat to revitalise Gillingham Town Centre, and that piece of work I will be looking to replicate. I will be working closely with council leaders across Medway, Tunbridge and Malling and Kent County Council to advance this agenda. In recent weeks, I've heard many inspiring speeches from new members, but what unites us all is a shared ambition to effect positive change for our communities and our country. I am honoured to serve, and I pledge to work across party lines to ensure economic security and improvements in our public services, but I also will do so in a friendly, open and approachable way. The government, of course, must deal with the £22 billion in-year deficit, and we must also resolve our economic prosperity to ensure all of our people and all of our young people especially come with the skills that secure them a future. And it is in that note, Madam Deputy Speaker, that I am deeply honoured to represent the constituents of Chesham and Aylesford. Thank you for your... Thank you.
I am going to call the front benches at 2:45, which members might like to think on before they make their contributions. Mims Davis.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it is a great honour to be called in this afternoon's David Amess Adjournment Debate. May I please refer members to my register of interests as well this afternoon as I make some points about my constituency. And there have been many maiden speeches this afternoon, the greatest tradition of the House, and congratulations to the new member for Chatham and Aylesford. Following Dame Tracy Crouch is no mean feat, and I have done that in the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, and I walked those lines. So, and I've appeared on media with the honourable gentleman. He will do very well for his constituents. And the member for Winchester, talking about vets and dementia and very personal issues in front of family is to be applauded. And all members around the House this afternoon, including our new action man, the member for Exmouth and Exeter, my honourable friend, making moving contributions, including the member for Bexleyheath and Crayford, the new member there, a carers champion and talking about disability. So I've enjoyed listening to speeches this afternoon. And many of us are not new members, but are new to parts of our constituency. And it is right that we gallop around our constituency in the way that Sir David Amess did, so that the Deputy Speaker, Madam, here is happy with us. So I shall try to do that in the finest of his traditions as well. One thing I share with Sir David Amess is a dog that is Westminster Dog of the Year. And in fact, the reigning Westminster Dog of the Year. So I've given back the trophy, and it's official. The battle will be back on. It's TJ's right now. Okay. I am the first member for East Grinstead and Uckfield and the Villages, parts of my constituency previously in the Horsham constituency, where the Right Honourable Sir Jeremy Quinn represented, and Maria Caulfield in the Lewis area, both assiduous members of Parliament dedicated to causes and very effective, and I feel the pressure following their footprints in terms of my constituency, which is very rural. It has parts of Lewis, Wealdon and 50% thereabouts of the Mid-Sussex district. And I wish the new Mid-Sussex Member of Parliament in the constituency well. We've already been working on several issues, and one of them she raised today, which was hospice funding, which St Catherine's in Pease Pottage is particularly struggling with, as well as St Peter and James in North Chailey. But if we are going to talk about assisted dying. We also need to be talking about dying well as living well. And I do urge the government to look at hospice funding as well as the wider NHS discussions that we've had today. The Uckfield Hospital needs further support, and my local GP services, like many others, are struggling when it comes to modality in Crawley Down, East Grinstead and parts of Burgess Hill. And indeed, I've heard just in the last few weeks about the Balcombe surgery needing further support. Our local GPs do a fabulous job, and it is important that we support them in the wider NHS. Roads and potholes have been a perennial inbox incoming. I'm sure new members will have found that. Traffic light queues and Royal Mail issues, whether it's in Slaffham, Pease Pottage or Uckfield, this is getting on constituents' nerves. So we need to tackle this. One point I'd like to make, also talking about Pease Pottage and our economy, is some amazing local businesses. One florist that's been in Pease Pottage for 2 generations, the Tim Haynes florist. I know how much he serves diligently his customers. Like so many communities, many of our businesses are small, rural, family-led businesses, and they include farming. In fact, one of the honourable members earlier talked about fine foods. Fine words and fine foods when it comes to farming are not one and the same, and we must this week make sure we back us farmers once again. In my inbox is EHCP, SEND provision and special school places. A very difficult area for many of my constituents, and this is shared as diagnoses get wider and challenges get wider. So I ask that those people who are being supported in independent schools are understood where they may not have an existing EHCP. And as we look at any changes to VAT and independent schools, there is a significant proportion of pupils in my constituency who attend independent schools where parents are very worried about the impact of any changes for their children, and it must be fair to all children what happens going forward. Turning to some positives that I've recently attended, the Queen Victoria Hospital, the 80th anniversary and the planting of the maple tree to celebrate the Canadian wing and the work of the plastic surgeons over the last 80 years in the town that doesn't stare. And I would like to say thank you so much to all of the team that have welcomed me, most recently at the Citizens Advice Bureau in Uckfield, a wonderful town which works so hard to support many rural residents and people who perhaps where poverty is not seen in the way that other areas are noticed. If I conclude, Madam Deputy Speaker, there is one particular issue around the Burgess Hill Academy, Blackthorns and Linfield Primary, around gag pooling and the issue of the University of Brighton Academy Trust, where 14 schools as part of this group in particular are seeing the impact on the day-to-day budgets of those local schools. I implore the government and the trust to work with the local MPs to make sure that the support that is going in for pupils actually lands into the laps of teachers and students. This is something that worries me greatly. And before I sit down, I must pay tribute to my predecessor, Sir Nicholas Holmes, Mimsy, as he called me, his constituent, supportive, bombastic, warm, strident, always sticking up for commuters and casework being of the highest order, and we'll all seek to continue in his finest tradition of standing up for those who go to work hard and live in our constituencies, and if we are lucky enough to be sent here, any kind of legacy such as his is again, like Sir David, the one we're aspiring to. Thank you.
Brian Leishman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and thank you to all the honourable members on such wonderful maiden speeches, especially the honourable member for Doncaster Central. I look forward to speaking with her about her career in the POA and also the 68 is Too Late campaign. It is also an honour to speak in the Sir David Amess Adjournment Debate. The warmth and respect in which he is spoken about is a measure of the gentleman. Madam Deputy Speaker, my contribution today is neither light-hearted or a happy one. The news that Grangemouth will stop refining oil in Q2 2025 is devastating. It's accurate to say that the mood music from the refinery owners has been pessimistic for quite some time now. Even with the threat of closure that's been hanging over the refinery, today's news is shocking. What is happening will be felt far beyond Grangemouth. It will reverberate around Scotland, Northern Ireland and the north of England, the areas of the UK that Grangemouth primarily services. Closure will impact all of the constituencies there. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, please permit me to give a very brief history. 100 years ago, Grangemouth was the perfect location for a refinery. There was an abundance of flat land, a bustling harbour, and, crucially, an already skilled workforce was there, one that was experienced in shale refining. It was one of the first crude oil refineries in the UK, and it is currently the primary supplier of aviation fuel for Scotland's main airports and a major supplier of petrol and diesel ground fuels across the central belt of Scotland. It also provides power to the Forties oil pipeline, bringing oil and gas ashore from the North Sea. While operations and procedures have changed over a century, a highly skilled local workforce remains a constant. Now, I could detail the statistics about the Grangemouth site and how it contributes 4% of Scotland's GDP, how it is a key piece of Scottish infrastructure, and while that is both accurate and, of course, pertinent while talking about the refinery, I want to talk about the human side of this issue. When the refinery was known locally as the BP, there were social clubs, gala events for families, and Grangemouth was known as Scotland's boomtown. The refinery, and specifically the workers, created a community, an industrious, working-class community where the jobs were dangerous, skilled and highly valued. The Grangemouth refinery has provided apprenticeships to local people, the possibility to gain experience and world-class qualifications that provide the opportunity of forging a career, a platform for self-improvement and social mobility. And for those of us that represent constituencies with social issues, often born out of industry leaving those communities, social mobility has become a negative journey, not a positive one. Madam Deputy Speaker, the comparisons with the miners of 4 decades ago is a clear one. And like the miners of the 1980s who kept Britain warm, the refinery workers of Grangemouth, they keep Britain moving. What happened to the miners cannot be the fate of Grangemouth refinery workers. Over the last few months, the campaign to keep Grangemouth working has spread the message of extending the life of the refinery, of investing in the workforce, and making sure that there is no gap that would see workers lose their jobs. I have stood in solidarity with the refinery workers, and I will continue to do so. Unite the Union have said that it does not accept that the future of the refinery should have been left to the whims and avarice of shareholders. And I completely agree. Energy security is intrinsically linked to national security, and for both to be in the hands of a foreign government and private capital is inherently wrong, not to mention utterly reckless. The primary ideal of the Keep Grangemouth Working campaign was to extend the life of the refinery so that a truly just transition could be achieved. That is what should happen, and there is nothing that will convince me otherwise. Oil will still be part of the energy mix for a while yet. The refinery workers know that. They also know that oil won't last forever. They know that cleaner industries must come. And when I listen to them, they tell me they want to be part of a new green industrial revolution. There are so many of the skills that will be required for us to achieve net zero and make Britain a clean energy superpower. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, if there is a gap between stopping refining next year and these new industries being ready, then the truth is the workforce will be gone. Workers cannot hang around and wait. Mortgages need to be paid. Families need to be fed. Jobs must be found, or talent leaves. The impact of that on the local community and the local economy, it would be enormous. The shops, the pubs, the restaurants, the hotels, the cafes, the B&Bs, the snack vans, they will all suffer if the refinery were to close. And as a government, we must do everything we can, and I welcome the steps that the Secretary of State and his team have taken with the announcement of £20 million in the form of funding to support the community and its workers. investing in local energy projects to create new growth for Grangemouth. And previously I have spoken positively about Project Willow and the importance of it being a joint commitment between both governments to determine what the industrial future of Grangemouth will be, because both the UK and Scottish governments will need to work together. The new working relationship this Labour government has with the Scottish government has already shown its worth. I know how hard the Secretary of State has worked during intensive discussions with the refinery owners to secure tailored support for the workers impacted, and along with his counterpart in the Scottish Government in devising a plan that will help secure Grangemouth's industrial future and protect the workforce. And I thank them both for that. It shows what can be achieved when both governments work together. But it is just a start. This Labour government has done more in 8 weeks on this issue than the Conservative government did in 14 years. Because today's news, although shocking, it has been coming. Because truthfully, Project Willow or the like should have been done and delivered years ago. And Madam Deputy Speaker, the workers in Grangemouth community, they need action. Action that leads to us creating something truly transformative and world-leading at Grangemouth. Sustainable aviation fuel, low-carbon hydrogen, clean e-fuels. Let's not rule anything out of the equation for the Grangemouth site. But we must act quickly, because time is of the essence. If we're to have a true, just transition, one that looks after workers and their communities, then we must move with purpose and speed on determining the industrial future of the Grangemouth site. And that has to be done while Grangemouth keeps refining until these new energies are ready. The environmental need for a green industrial revolution has been there for a long time and discussed for ages. But now we see the social need for the transition to clean energy. And the need for that has been incredibly accelerated today.
Speech, Helen Maguire.
Madam Deputy Speaker, thank you for calling me to make my maiden speech. And I'd like to congratulate the Honourable Member for Lower and Grangemouth, and it was interesting to hear about the challenges facing his industry in his constituency. Madam Deputy Speaker, it is with immense pride and honour that I stand here today to give my maiden speech as the first ever female and Liberal Democrat Member of Parliament for Epsom and Ewell, which also includes the towns of Ashtead and Leatherhead. This moment is not just about my election victory, it is part of a long journey of progress that started with brave women like Emily Wilding Davison, a suffragette who gave her life for the cause of women's rights. In fact, in 1911, she famously hid within the very walls of this building, the Palace of Westminster, to declare it her residence on the census. And just 2 years later, she made the ultimate sacrifice, losing her life at the Epsom Derby while campaigning for women's suffrage. And it is remarkable that today, 101 years after her passing, we now have 263 women in this Parliament, more than ever before. This progress is a testament to her legacy and the relentless efforts of organisations like 50/50, to whom I am personally grateful for their support in getting me here. And I'm delighted that there's now progress towards establishing a women's caucus in Parliament. I want to take this opportunity to congratulate Lord Rayleigh, my predecessor, on his move to the other place and thank him for the 23 years of dedicated service to Epsom and Ewell. His service to the community of Epsom and Ewell is well recognised, and I look forward to building upon the work that has been done, bringing fresh perspectives and new energy to our local and national challenges. So Epsom and Ewell is a community that prides itself on strong local values, resilience with a rich sporting history and a creative history. It's home to the world-famous Epsom Derby. We have the University of Creative Arts, Lane Theatre Arts and many sporting clubs, including 3 running clubs, 2 football clubs as well. It has several vibrant economic hubs with many successful businesses, large and small. But it is the people who make my constituency special, whether it is our small businesses, voluntary groups or the diverse families who've made this area their home. Epsom and Ewell represents the best of what a community can be when it works together. Epsom and Ewell is a beautiful place, blessed with remarkable green spaces and historical significance, and we are fortunate to have 3 sites of special scientific interest: Ashtead Common, Priest Hill and Stones Road Pond. We also have beautiful green spaces such as Horton and Nonsuch Park, Epsom Downs and the Surrey Hills, an area of outstanding natural beauty. But one site that holds special meaning for many is Langley Vale, which was used to train over 8,000 soldiers during World War I and where Lord Kitchener famously inspected the troops. Today it stands as a centenary wood, a place of reflection with beautiful sculptures honouring our military past. As someone who proudly served in the Army, in the Royal Military Police, I'm deeply moved by our community's ties to the armed forces. My own military experience includes serving in Iraq during Optelic 4 in 2004, where I was responsible for retraining and mentoring the Iraqi police force in Maysan province. It was a volatile and dangerous region at the time, and it wasn't an easy tour. We came under fire on a regular basis, and it was made harder with the knowledge that just a year before my arrival, 6 of my RMP colleagues were killed in Majar al-Kabir. The coroner found that they'd been given inadequate radios and ammunition. So it's no surprise that when I arrived, we were given more ammo and weapons. I want to ensure that our armed forces continue to have the right resources to stay safe in their duties as this government conducts a spending review. And I hope the Secretary of State for Defence will bear in mind the effects that cuts can have in the field. Madam Deputy Speaker, it's apt that I talk about this issue today on the day of the issuing of the Darcy report, as I want to share a personal experience that underscores my commitment to improving healthcare services in Epsom and Ewell. In 2007, my 6-week-old son suddenly turned blue in front of me while a health visitor was visiting. I called 999. It was a terrifying moment, and before I knew what was going on, my living room was packed with paramedics and there was equipment everywhere. I was told to pack my bag, and shortly afterwards I arrived at A&E. The crash team was there and my baby boy was surrounded by 20 consultants trying to figure out what was going wrong. I stood there, looking on, helpless. The doctors managed to stabilise him and moved him to the amazing Evelina Hospital just over the other side of the river here. As they didn't have the specialist equipment needed in the hospital, my son went into paediatric intensive care unit and every bit of his skin, his head, was covered by some sort of patch and monitor, trying to establish what was going on. And the consultants informed us that he had bronchiolitis and that it was going to be touch and go that evening. Thankfully, he survived the night, and we spent over a week in intensive care as the amazing doctors worked to save his life from bronchiolitis. I saw firsthand the critical importance of high-quality emergency care, and it is my mission to make sure that the residents of Epsom, Ewell, Ashton and Leatherhead have access to the best possible healthcare. Our community was promised one of the 40 new hospitals, a commitment that must be fulfilled. We're part of the Epsom and St Helier Trust. St Helier Hospital is struggling with crumbling facilities and overstretched staff. We have fewer hospital beds per capita than many other nations. Ceilings are falling in and there are buildings that are condemned. The need for this new hospital is urgent, and I look forward to discussing this with the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care in the coming weeks. You'll be pleased to know that my son is now a big, strong 16-year-old and challenging his parents as every teenager does. Epsom and Ewell is home to 2 significant rivers, the Hogs Mill, a relatively pristine chalk river whose beauty is immortalised by Sir John Everett Millais in his iconic painting Ophelia, and the River Mole, one of the most polluted in the country. Thames Water's negligent handling of our water resources has led to over 8,000 hours of sewage discharge in the River Mole in the first 6 months of this year alone. Thames Water is crippled by being billions in debt and water bills keep rising. Executive bonuses are handed out as the sewage is pouring out. This mismanagement of our water is unacceptable, and I call for greater regulation and accountability and a sewage tax to protect our rivers and water infrastructure. While Epsom and Ewell has affluent areas, we also face stark social inequalities. There are parts of my constituency where food banks have become a lifeline for struggling families, and our local housing waiting list has grown to over 1,300 households. Food banks are not the norm. They're a sign that society simply isn't working, and I'm concerned that even more of my constituents will be using them this winter as they struggle without the winter fuel allowance. This stark contrast between wealth and deprivation is a reminder that we must do more to support those who are most in need. And I'm incredibly grateful for the work of the Good Company, Leatherhead Community Hub, local faith organisations, all the volunteers and local charities who work tirelessly to provide for our community's most vulnerable. As a Member of Parliament for Epsom and Ewell, a constituency that stretches from Worcester Park and Stoneleigh in the north to Ashstead and Leatherhead, the gateway of Surrey Hills in the south, I want our community to thrive economically, socially and environmentally. My constituency has inspired literary greats like C.S. Lewis and Jane Austen, and I believe it can continue to be a place of innovation and inspiration. Madam Deputy Speaker, I thank my parents for their support throughout these years, and I thank my husband and 3 kids for their support and leafleting prowess throughout my campaign. But Madam Deputy Speaker, most importantly, I thank my constituents for placing their trust in me, and I am committed to paying the trust with service, dedication and determination to make Epsom and Ewell a better place for everyone. Thank you.
Yeah. Speech, Kevin McKenna.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, for calling me to address the House for my first speech, and thank you for making so much time for so many of us to make our first speeches today. I'd particularly like to congratulate the member for Epsom and Ewell. The story about your child in intensive care touched me very deeply as an intensive care practitioner, and I can see that you're going to be a fantastic advocate for our armed forces and the things that they need to serve the country well. I also need to mention in passing the report presented earlier in the House by my honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Health, written by the Lord Darcy, not because of the content of the report, but because in 2015, I was honoured to become a Darcy Fellow. This was a programme that he set up to try and bring clinicians, like myself, a nurse, into clinical leadership to make sure that actually the NHS and the health system was led by clinicians. I'm not sure that the plan was to get us all into the Houses of Parliament, but I'm the first Darcy Fellow here, and I think there are going to be quite a few more. Also, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like to say that I'm very, very honoured to be speaking in a debate that's in the memory of David Amess. So David Amess's constituency of Southend can be seen from my constituency of Sittingbourne and Sheppey. You see the beautiful vista of Southend, now a city, across the Thames. Actually, over the last few months, during the campaign and afterwards, there have been several times when I've looked over at Southend and taken a moment to reflect actually on what the manner of his death and the tragedy of that, but what it means for all of us serving here in the House. So I have taken that to reflect. And look, it's a great blessing of my constituency that it has so many of these vistas, beautiful vistas down the Thames and the Medway Estuary. Despite the fact that we've got our busy, traffic-laden towns, those broad, flat salt marshes meeting big skies, places where you can suddenly escape and properly reflect on everything that matters to you in life. During the election campaign, I asked my constituents what mattered most to them in the constituency and what they valued most, and it was that proximity to nature that kept coming forwards. They mentioned the wide open estuary waters of the Thames and Medway. We've got several of my Medway colleagues here today, and also the many sites of special scientific interest and nature reserves at Henley, where now that some of you are spending time in London, you might want to pop down for a hot yoga weekend. It's a whole thing. But like so many other members, when they've described their seats, Madam Deputy Speaker, that's only half the story. The other half is the still proudly industrial town of Sittingbourne, whose character and location challenge a lot of people's preconceptions of Kent. And Sittingbourne's twin on the Isle of Sheppey, Sheerness-on-Sea, with its busy docks, docks that will hopefully only become busier as the opportunities for growth and construction and new green industries which are being pursued by this government, because Sittingbourne and Sheppey is perfectly located and waiting to take advantage of all of this. And of course, my job is not only to argue for our place in rebuilding Britain, it's to ensure that my constituents see real social, economic, health and well-being benefits for those opportunities. Because the factors that led to the foundations of our towns being laid centuries ago are the same ones that fit the way technological, industrial and transport strategies are all pointing. Sittingbourne straddles the main road from Dover to London and is connected directly by water, road and rail to Sheerness docks on Sheppey. This is what made the Saxon kings of Kent grab the land and claim it as their terra regis, something that the residents of Milton Regis are very proud to remind me of, that it's the royal town in the middle of Sittingbourne. And it's those same routes that allowed the town of Queenborough to develop as a major port, protecting the routes tucked behind Sheppey as a safe waterway from London through to the continent and the rest of the world as a major trading route. And it was also what enabled Sittingbourne itself in the 19th century to develop a major brick building industry, producing more bricks and having more people working in it than the potteries in Staffordshire, largely which we used to build London. Many of the townhouses in the 19th century, big and small, including Buckingham Palace, and quite a lot of the buildings on this parliamentary estate will have been built with the clay from Sittingbourne and its bricks. And it's those opportunities, using water and transport and greener energy and greener ways of travelling, that are that for Sittingbourne and for Sheerness are a great opportunity for the future. Peel Ports at Sheerness are a major importer of construction materials for the south of England. With investment in restoring rail freight links and ambition to again use those water routes, we can be at the heart of a green revolution. But there's more to a place than land and water. A place is made by people. What will ensure that the people of my constituency get the benefits they're crying out for from growth and rebuilding is the strength of our local communities and the collective action that comes from grassroots organisations. As we move more services out of hospitals to the community, as we try to mend the broken sense of cohesion in our society, with the right support, these community anchors will be key. Great organisations like Seashells Nursery in Sheerness that holds true to the now proven benefits of Sure Start centres, but which sadly itself is now under threat of closure. Wiggles Children's Nursery, which has partnered with Sheppey's Range Rovers Football Club to create a multi-generational facility that will massively boost the health of their neighbourhood. There are people coming together separately on the island and on the mainland to form progressive men's mental health peer support groups, Men's Talk Sheppey and Men's Talk Sittingbourne. There's a team of volunteers who resurrected the Sittingbourne Carnival this year after a several years gap to ensure that its 130 plus year tradition does not die, but instead will go from strength to strength. There's a Swale Food Bank, and underpinning them all, and so many of the voluntary organisations in my constituency, is the Swale CVS, fostering lots of organisations to get started, get organised and help their communities. Part of the reason for this depth of community cooperation is the challenge of having some of the most deprived parts of Kent and the South East in my constituency. And a big driver for this is unfortunately the very geography that otherwise brings in so many benefits and opportunities. The nature of being an island with only one point in the west that connects Sheppey to the rest of England leads to pockets of isolation. And when the two bridges there go down, as sadly they have all too often of late, people cannot get off Sheppey to go to work or school, or onto Sheppey to deliver services in Sheppey's hospitals, schools, docks and 3 prisons, all of which does not just impact Sheppey, but Sittingbourne and the surrounding villages too. Both of my predecessors have worked to overcome these entrenched challenges. So I want to pay tribute to my immediate predecessor, Gordon Henderson, who so many here know so well, for his work in persuading his party when they were empowered to invest in technical skills training on the island and expand Sheppey College. And my Labour predecessor, Derek Wyatt, secured the funding for a permanent fixed bridge to the island, the Sheppey Crossing, to overcome the problems of the old Kingsbury Bridge, which is only a few metres away and has to be raised several times a day to let ships through to link the paper mills and the docks. Both of them believe in the enormous potential of the area, but there's a lot more to do. It's a professional habit of intensive care nurses that we are inveterate fiddlers and fixers. We like to help people and we like to keep busy doing so. Now, though, I've swapped adjusting ventilator settings and syringe drivers for working in public policy, I need to find some new ways to keep busy. However, so I will keep working with people in Sittingbourne and Sheppey to bring them together and work collectively at trying to fix things for the better. But there is one thing in the constituency I would like to assure you, Madam Deputy Speaker, that I won't be fiddling with. The SS Richard Montgomery, a wrecked World War II cargo ship sunk just off Sheerness, which is packed with something like 1.4 thousand tonnes of high explosive. Most experts feel as long as she isn't disturbed, the seawater will gradually have inactivated these explosives. So, if they were ever disturbed enough to trigger, any fireworks would be minor. However, there is a minority view that says if that isn't the case, and something triggered them all to go off at once, the resulting explosion would not just inundate the whole of Sittingbourne and Sheppey, it would send a 5-metre tsunami back up the Thames all the way to central London, swamping the Palace of Westminster, giving us all very wet feet, and most of the MPs in the South East and London an awful lot of extra casework. Finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like to again thank my constituents for putting their faith in me, the campaigners and activists who helped me get elected, my parents and siblings who've always shown how proud they are of me, and most of all my husband Lee, who I could not have gotten this far in life without, and who is a true partner to me in everything we do. Thank you.
Maiden speech, Manuela Pertigan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, for the opportunity to make my maiden speech today. May I thank all the honourable members for their fine contributions, including the honourable members for Epsom and Newell and Sittingbourne and Sheppey. It is the greatest honour of my life to serve the people of Stratford-on-Avon. I'm humbled to have been elected to represent the place I call home, where I live and where I've raised my family, who are here today in the public gallery. I'm also proud to be the first Liberal MP for our constituency in over a century and the first woman ever to be elected to this role. I want therefore to extend my heartfelt thanks to the people of Stratford, Ulster, Studley, Shipston, Henley, Bidford, and the many villages and hamlets that make up our beautiful constituency. I thank them for placing their trust in me. I promise to be their champion and a strong and unwavering voice for everyone, fighting every day for the fair deal that you deserve. I would like to pay tribute to my predecessor, Nadine Zahawi, who was MP for Stratford-on-Avon for the last 14 years. During his political career, he covered many important roles in cabinet, but I would like to thank him in particular for his work as vaccine minister during the COVID pandemic. I would also like to acknowledge the service of the late John Maples, who represented Stratford-on-Avon with distinction from 1997 until 2010, before being elevated to the other place. He was both well-liked and greatly admired. While I'm proud to be the first female MP elected for Stratford-on-Avon, I'm not the first to bring Italian heritage to this role. That distinction belongs to another of my predecessors, John Profumo, who beat me to it. Though, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm planning on a much quieter stay in the history books. My constituency, Madam Deputy Speaker, is one of the most beautiful areas of our country, with luscious woodland including the Heart of England forest, valleys lapped by rivers and brooks, fertile farmland, a landscape so special as only the Warwickshire countryside can be. My connection to my constituency is one of deep love, a love that stretches from Shipston on Stour and the rolling Cotswolds fringes in the south, to the Avon Valley villages, to Henley in Arden in the north, where the majestic forest of Arden once stood. At its heart lies Stratford-upon-Avon, celebrated worldwide as the birthplace of the greatest playwright of all, William Shakespeare. Each year on William's birthday, the town remembers and celebrates his most famous son, with civic dignitaries and local school children parading through the historic streets to lay flowers on his tomb in Holy Trinity Church, and I'm looking forward to join them next April. What makes our constituency special is above all its people, resilient, community-minded, each town and village blessed with volunteers, helping in repair cafes, food banks, community speed watch, flood action groups, and warm hubs. There are outstanding places of learning, such as our local schools and colleges, the Shakespeare Institute of the University of Birmingham, the University of Warwick Innovation Campus, and national portfolio organizations such as the Royal Shakespeare Company and the Shakespeare Birthday Trust, as well as grassroots arts companies like the Berkshire Theatre and Escape Arts. Events such as the Shipston Proms celebrate the wealth of music talent, and most of all, we're a constituency of entrepreneurs and innovators, businesses and social enterprise. Overlooked by Beaudesert Castle, known locally as the Mount, the town of Henley in Arden has a timber-framed high street, which includes Henley most famous attraction, Henley Ice Cream, which is well worth a visit. Ulster is a town rich in community spirit that comes together each year for events like the Ulster Food Festival, and the town has roots that stretch back to Roman times, and its heritage is proudly preserved today in the Roman Ulster Museum. Just up the road from Ulster is Cotton Court, home of the Throckmorton family, who played a rather infamous role in the Gunpowder Plot of 1605. As the new MP for the area, I can assure you I won't be continuing that local tradition. My constituency also has some of the most beautiful waterways in the country, the River Avon, Olne, Arrow and Stour, and our fantastic canal network, including the longest canal aqueduct in England, the Edstone Aqueduct. These are not only vital to our community natural and industrial heritage, but also central to our environmental responsibilities. Sadly, not enough has been done to tackle river pollution. I want to thank residents for joining citizen science projects, regularly testing the water and collecting much-needed data on the state of our river's health, so that we can hold the government and the water companies to account. As a rural constituency, we face many challenges, from NHS dentist deserts to long waiting times to access mental health services, send families battling for education provision, and fuel poverty. Many of my vulnerable constituents live in homes which are off-grid and expensive to heat. The Warm Homes and Energy Conservation Act, introduced by Sir David Amess, was an important legislation which sought to eliminate fuel poverty. To further combat this, we need an emergency home insulation program so that homes are safe, warm, and cheap to heat. Finally, as Shakespeare wrote, some are born great, some achieve greatness, and others have greatness thrust upon them. I stand here today not because I was born great or because I sought greatness, but because the people of Stratford-on-Avon have entrusted me with public service. Together, we can achieve greatness, not for ourselves, but for our constituents and our country. With a new parliament, we have a chance to strive for a fairer, greener, and more inclusive future. The stage is set, and now it's time for us to play our part.
Chris Philp.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's a great pleasure to appear here this afternoon to wind up the Sir David Amess Adjournment Debate. All of us who served in this House with Sir David remember him with enormous affection. His sense of humour and his dedication to Southend are something all of us remember with enormous fondness. And I particularly thank my right honourable friend, the member for Rayleigh and Wickford, for opening this afternoon's debate and for the words he said about Sir David earlier today, which all of us will, I'm sure, remember for a very long time to come. We've had, I think, something like 25 speeches this afternoon. It's going to be very difficult to touch on all of them in a short space of time, but I'll try and canter through some of the more memorable moments. The member for Bexleyheath and Crayford, a fellow South Londoner, spoke eloquently in his maiden speech. He clearly brings some very profound personal experience of caring to this House, and we look forward to hearing from him a great deal more during his time with us. Of course, the member for Harrow East spoke with his customary passion on issues to do with fire safety, and he made some extremely important points about the need to expedite the remedial work to the cladding on tall buildings, which I'm sure on both sides of the House we will be following carefully. And I congratulate him on his triumphant election or acclamation as chairman of the Backbench Business Committee. Another fine maiden speech from the member for Reading West and Mid Berkshire, the setting I learnt for Wind in the Willows, and we heard how she drew inspiration from her mother, a teacher, and her father, a police officer. The member for New Forest East, not exactly a maiden speech, he's been here for... Maybe he gave a maiden speech sometime in the mists of the 19th century, I don't know. But far from a maiden speech, he recalled the service of those people who served in the Second World War, and also drew the House's attention to the importance of maintaining, or rather strengthening, the independence of the Intelligence Committee, which he had the distinction of chairing in the last Parliament. Another maiden speech from Southampton Test, from which the Mayflower set sail. They have a Premier League team once again, but I hope Crystal Palace, the Premier League team in Croydon, in my borough, secure victory whenever we meet. my honourable friend, the member for Hamble Valley, spoke, and I was told my honourable friend was the best man at the wedding of the member for Southampton Test. Is that right? Well, there we are. We've got some cross-party links going there already. A maiden speech from Doncaster Central, touching on a whole load of local issues, but including a desire to deliver, I understand, a local power plant. Well, I'm sure all of us wish the new member for Doncaster Central good luck in that undertaking. Another maiden speech from Henley and Thame, with a tribute, of course, to John Howell, her predecessor, who sadly suffered a stroke a few months ago. I know all of us will wish him a speedy recovery, and I wish the new member for Henley and Thame well in representing her beautiful constituency. Not as beautiful as Croydon, I should add, but fairly beautiful nonetheless. Another maiden speech from Bolton West, where the new member spoke about his experience working on serious crime and fraud, as well as paying tribute to the Bolton Mountain Rescue Team. I'm sure all of them have our good wishes. Followed by another maiden speech. They were coming thick and fast. The new member for Exmouth and Exeter East, I can see sitting behind me over there, who I understand got married during the campaign. That is pretty bold. A pretty bold move, I must say. Not quite sure where his honeymoon was held. Darling, come with me to a constituency committee room while we do some telling. I don't know, maybe that was a euphemism, I don't know. Anyway, I hope his marriage got off to a good start. He's a braver man than I am. Another maiden speech from mid-Derbyshire, which included, of course, a tribute to Pauline Latham, our former colleague, and the new member for mid-Derbyshire spoke with great eloquence about the creative industries that are so important in that constituency. On to Chesham and Amersham. We heard quite a lot about local issues there, including the local bus timetable in Coleshill, but also the importance of helping pensioners on the question of the winter fuel allowance that we debated just a few days ago. A maiden speech from the new member for Lichfield. I was going to say he has some big footsteps to fill, but maybe he's got quite a big haircut to follow as well. We'll see if his locks are quite so luxuriant in 30 years' time. There are some solutions available should they be necessary. The member for West Dorset made another fine maiden speech, drawing attention to the gigantic image of the fertility symbol, the Cern Abbot fertility symbol. I'm sure he will be standing as proudly as the figure in that carved image. The member for Altrincham Sale West paid tribute to his predecessor, Sir Graham Brady, who was kept busy with the shenanigans on the Conservative side of the House over the last few years. Hopefully his successor, the member for Harrow East, won't be quite so occupied. But the new member for Altrincham Sale West made an important point about the Hong Kong population his constituency is hosting, fleeing persecution by the Chinese Communist Party. Of course, where people flee persecution, this is a genuine persecution. This is a nation which welcomes them. We heard from my good friend, the member for West Aberdeenshire and Kim Cardin, who has moved just to confuse me. It's easily done, and he drew attention to the importance of the Scotch whisky industry, which all of us, I'm sure, support enthusiastically, and of course to the importance of the North Sea and the oil and gas contained under it, and how important it is that we are able to use that here in the United Kingdom. A maiden speech from Gillingham and Raynham, paying tribute to Raymond Chisty and talking about opportunity and the great thing about this country, that people from all backgrounds can go on to achieve great things, and that is one of the values I think that unites us across this House, and I look forward to working with her on that. A maiden speech from Winchester, where the new member is a vet. He made a reference to taking the temperature of people. Now, I wasn't quite sure what he was referring to, so I Googled how vets take temperatures, and I've got to say, after seeing the images that Google threw up, I will not be asking him to take my temperature anytime soon. It would have to be a truly desperate circumstance to require that. We heard a maiden speech from Chatham and Aylesford, paying tribute, of course, to Dame Tracy Crouch. Chatham is, of course, the home of the Chatham Royal Dockyard, which built the Royal Navy in the 17th, 18th and 19th centuries. And that is a piece of history I'm sure she is very proud of. East Grinstead and Uckfield, not a maiden speech again, but expressing support for local schools and referencing one of her predecessors, Sir Nicholas Soames, who stood up for Southern Railway, a line which runs through my constituency in Croydon as well. And I pay tribute to my honourable friend and to Sir Nicholas for the work they've done championing commuters. Now, a very important speech from the member for Alloa and Grangemouth, who I can see on the other side. The proposed closure of the Grangemouth refinery is an extremely serious matter for his constituents, but for the country. It represents 14% of our refining capacity, and I'd like to see the government do more to keep that open, because we certainly need it. Now, I'm running out of time, so perhaps my opposite number on the government benches can cover the remaining 3 speeches. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, as you have requested, I will conclude. Congratulations to all of those who have made maiden speeches today. It's clear to me that the future of this House is in safe hands with such eloquent speakers and such passionate advocates for their constituents. I wish everyone a pleasant conference recess and look forward to seeing you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and everybody else in October.
Chris Elmore.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker. This will be a good test in my agility of how quickly I can speak as a Welshman. It's fair to say, Madam Deputy Speaker, that we have had a very, very robust and positive debate this afternoon, crisscrossing constituencies from the north of Scotland all the way to the south coast of England. Because I am indeed Welsh and the member for Chesham and Amersham is from North Wales, we seem to have had a good coverage of Great Britain one way or another. The only part of the United Kingdom we're missing, obviously, is Northern Ireland. Well, it's been Christmas trees to Taylor Swift, Madam Deputy Speaker. And it's been a wonderful tour of the rich industrial heritage of our country and how proud we all are as members of Parliament to serve our constituents. And the theme of this debate really has been about service. No matter which party you serve in this House, it is about trying to ensure that not only that Sir David Amess's legacy is kept and remembered and celebrated, that all of us want to ensure that we are here to work for our constituents every single day. Can I pay tribute to all those members who have made maiden speeches today? I think I'm 8 years since mine, which feels like a lifetime ago, and I will try very quickly to canter through what were truly wonderful maiden speeches from right across the House. The member for Bexleyheath and Crayford, I pay tribute to him for his courage in talking about his family. There is often nothing more difficult in this chamber than talking about personal experience, and I really do hope that he becomes the advocate that he wants to be for people who are disabled, to ensure they get the very best care they need, not just from this government, but from people right across our United Kingdom. The member for Harrow East, the new chairman of the 22, I do hope he's hoping for a quieter period, it must be said, and for a long period of serving as the chair from opposition, I say. Can I pay tribute to my honourable friend, the member for Reading West and Mid Berkshire? I've had the privilege of knowing her and her wife for a number of years. I know what an advocate she will be for her constituents, and I know that she will also be a true champion for people who suffer with Alzheimer's. And I've been so privileged to work with her over the last few weeks as we start the work of a new government. Can I say to the right honourable gentleman, the member for New Forest East, we do take extremely seriously the point he raised around the Intelligence and Security Committee, and I, of course, will make sure that this piece of work is concluded quickly, particularly now that we've reached the point around resolving issues around select committees. Can I say to my honourable friend, the member for Doncaster Central, she must have one of the most hardest working and diligent predecessors in this House. My first chief, I've never been more frightened of a meeting than going in to see Baroness Winterton as a new Member of Parliament. But I know that my honourable friend will be a true advocate for the city of Doncaster, and I know how hard she will work. Can I say to the member for Henley and Thames, she does have an extraordinary member to follow, and I do wish every recovery to him in the months and weeks ahead. To my friend for Bolton West, I've had a number of meetings with him over the time that he was a parliamentary candidate, and has been a really excellent MP to date, and I know that he will put Bolton on the map as indeed my two other colleagues will from across the city. Exmouth and Exeter, can I thank him for his service to our country, and I know what a strong advocate he will be. And as a Sir Walter Raleigh nut myself, not sure if that's in parliamentary language, I'd look forward to some discussions with him, on Sir Walter. To my honourable friends from mid-Derbyshire, to Chesham and Amersham, to Lichfield, I'm making no comment on here, to West Dorset, to Altrincham and Sale West, to Gillingham and Raynham, to Winchester, to Chatham and Aylesford, to East Grinstead and Utland, to Alloway and Grangemouth, to Epsom and Newell, to Sittingbourne and Sheppey, and to Stratford-upon-Avon. I pay tribute to all of you for the positivity in which you've shown in advocating for your constituents, for the personal stories that you've put forward as members of this House. But the reason for the canter, Madam Deputy Speaker, is to pay tribute to the opening speech in this House, the Right Honourable Gentleman for Rayleigh. In the context of Sir David, I still can recall vividly when I became a father almost 4 years ago, I barely knew Sir David, and I can recall him quite literally cantering up the no lobby because he had discovered I'd become a father, to give me a note to tell me that there will be no greater privilege than to become a father. He was right, obviously. And it is a memory that has lived with me since his death and before. The man was a gentleman, a true parliamentarian, and somebody that we should always work to keep his memory alive. And I was so pleased to hear the stories from the Right Honourable Gentleman, including the one that we didn't know about. And I bet there aren't many parliamentary candidates adopted under a light of any sort, I would have thought, actually. In concluding, Madam Deputy Speaker, can I thank you and all the Deputy Speakers. As a whip, it is a rare privilege to be able to speak, so I congratulate you on your election into the Deputy Speakership. And I'm reliably informed by my honourable friend, Member for Llanelli, the Under-Secretary in the Wales office, that if there are 300, I'm looking for my note number, 330 new members that all take 10 minutes each in their maidens, it's 55 hours of maiden speeches. And I say this in all sincerity, we are all the better for it, Madam Deputy Speaker. To learn about the rich history of our country is so important in celebrating what is best about this House. And that is the key thing for all new members to understand. We do work cross-party. We're all human. We all work together for the betterment of our constituents. I'd like to pay tribute to all staff of this House, civil servants, all of our staff, to our constituency teams, to Mr Speaker's office, as we now rise for the autumn conference, recess, whatever it may be. I wish colleagues successful conferences. I think some may be a little bit more jubilant than others. And I look forward to seeing all members when we return in October.
The question is, as on the order paper, as many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.